I just want to check my balance. The words fell like stones into the gleaming marble lobby of Crownstone National Bank, and the room reacted as if Evelyn Carter had pulled a fire alarm. At 90 years old, her dark fingers wrapped around a wooden cane, worn smooth by decades of use, she stood in the center of that cathedral of wealth and watched every head turn toward her. Bank President Preston Caldwell, 6 feet of tailored arrogance in a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, looked up from his conversation with a diamond-draped socialite and laughed. Not a polite chuckle, a full-throated bark of amusement that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "Ma'am, I think you've wandered into the wrong building," he announced loudly enough for the entire lobby to hear. Wealthy clients exchanged knowing smirks. Security guards shifted their weight, hands drifting toward their radios. But Evelyn Carter didn't move, didn't apologize, didn't explain. She simply stood there with the kind of stillness that only comes from a lifetime of surviving rooms exactly like this one. And in that moment, nobody realized they were watching a woman who had spent 70 years planning for this exact confrontation. I invite you to follow my story to the very end. Please like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story has traveled. The morning had started the way most mornings did for Evelyn Carter, with the slow, deliberate ritual of choosing which version of herself to present to the world. Standing before her bedroom mirror in the small house on Maple Street where she'd lived for 43 years, she studied her reflection with the critical eye of someone who'd learned early that appearance was armor. The navy dress with white piping at the collar, sensible shoes with rubber soles that wouldn't slip on marble floors, the pearl earrings her late husband James had given her on their 50th anniversary, back when his hands were still steady enough to work the tiny clasps. But it was the bank card she held now that commanded her attention. Faded beige plastic, scratched and worn, the magnetic strip barely visible after years of use. The bank's old logo, the one they'd changed 15 years ago, still printed on the front. Most people would have requested a replacement. Evelyn had kept this one deliberately. "You sure about this, Grandma?" The voice came from the doorway, where her grandson Marcus leaned against the frame, concern etched across his 32-year-old face. He'd driven over early, knowing what day this was, knowing what she planned to do. Evelyn turned slowly, her movements measured not by age, but by intention. "I've been sure about this for longer than you've been alive, baby. But if you just call ahead, talk to someone, and miss the look on their faces?" A smile played at the corners of her mouth, but it didn't reach her eyes. Those eyes, dark and sharp as flint, held something harder than humor. "No, this needs to happen exactly the way it happens." Marcus pushed off the doorframe, approaching with the careful respect he'd learned to show his grandmother's decisions. "The recorder's charged, new battery, 6 hours of storage." She nodded, patting the small device tucked into her purse. "Good boy. I could come with you." "No." The word was gentle but absolute. "This is something I need to do alone. Some battles you walk into by yourself or you don't walk into them at all." The drive to Crownstone National Bank took 20 minutes through the transformed landscape of downtown. Evelyn watched the neighborhoods change through the passenger window as Marcus drove, his one concession she'd allowed, not wanting to deal with parking. The working-class blocks of her youth, where laundromats and corner stores had once anchored community life, had given way to artisan coffee shops and boutique fitness studios. Buildings she'd cleaned as a young woman now housed tech startups and investment firms. "It's like a different city," Marcus muttered, navigating around a Tesla double-parked outside a juice bar. "It's the same city," Evelyn corrected quietly, "just wearing a different face. But underneath, the bones are the same. The power structures are the same. The assumptions are the same." She turned to look at him. "That's why this matters." Crownstone National Bank occupied a corner that had been a bank for as long as anyone could remember. The current building, all glass and marble and architectural ambition, had been erected in 1998, replacing the old stone structure where Evelyn had opened her first account in 1955. She'd been 17 then, clutching her first real paycheck from the textile factory where she'd lied about her age to get hired. The white manager had counted her money 3 times, as if expecting it to disappear, before grudgingly processing her deposit. "You want me to wait?" Marcus asked, pulling up to the curb. "No, go to work. I'll take a cab home." Evelyn gathered her purse, checked that the recorder was positioned correctly, and opened the door. "And Marcus, don't worry. I've been preparing for this day since before you were born." The morning sun caught the glass facade as she approached, making it gleam like a cathedral to capitalism. Through the revolving door, she noted the weight of it, how much force it took to push, into the lobby that was designed to make visitors feel either powerful or small. 30-foot ceilings, marble floors imported from Italy, fresh orchids on every surface, and people. So many people who belonged here, or at least looked like they belonged here. Evelyn Carter, in her neat navy dress and worn shoes, carrying her old purse and older cane, did not look like she belonged here. She felt the shift in the room's energy the moment she cleared the doorway. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they lowered. Eyes flicked her direction, assessed her, dismissed her. A security guard near the entrance straightened slightly, tracking her movement. She recognized the calculation happening in multiple minds simultaneously. Elderly black woman, modest clothes, uncertain gait. Lost? Confused? Potential problem? The marble felt slick under her rubber soles as she made her way toward the center of the lobby. She'd learned long ago to move with purpose, even when fear churned in her stomach. Especially then. 73 years since she'd first cleaned this corner of the city as a teenage girl. 73 years of practicing the art of existing in spaces that didn't want her to exist. Near the private banking stations, a cluster of people in expensive clothes laughed at something. Among them stood Preston Caldwell, unmistakable even if Evelyn hadn't spent 3 weeks studying his photograph. Tall, mid-40s, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. His suit probably cost $4,000. His watch certainly cost more. He was holding court for a small audience, a woman in cream Chanel, a man with silver hair and a corporate pin, a younger couple who laughed at his jokes with the eagerness of people seeking approval. Evelyn approached the teller stations, but before she could reach them, a customer service representative intercepted her. Young woman, mid-20s, blonde hair in a tight bun, smile professionally bright, but eyes already making assessments. "Good morning. Can I help you find something?" The tone was friendly enough, but the subtext was clear. "Are you lost?" "I'd like to check my account balance," Evelyn said clearly. The representative's smile flickered. "Of course. Do you have an appointment with your personal banker?" "I wasn't aware I needed one to check my own account." "Oh, well, it's just—" The young woman glanced toward the teller stations, then back. "We typically handle routine transactions at the automated terminals. I can show you. I prefer to speak with a person." Something in Evelyn's tone, not rude, not aggressive, but absolutely immovable, made the representative pause. I'll get someone to help you." But she didn't move toward the teller stations. She moved toward Preston Caldwell. Evelyn watched the interaction like a chess player 3 moves ahead. The representative approached the bank president's group with apologetic body language, interrupting his story. A brief conversation, too quiet to hear, but Evelyn saw Preston's eyes flick her direction, saw the immediate categorization, saw his expression shift from mild irritation at the interruption to something more complex, amusement mixed with annoyance. He excused himself from his audience and approached Evelyn with the long stride of someone who owned not just the building, but the very air inside it. The representative trailed behind like an anxious shadow. "Good morning," Preston said, his voice carrying the kind of hearty, false warmth that wealthy white men deployed like a weapon. "I'm Preston Caldwell, president of this branch. I understand there's some confusion?" "No confusion," Evelyn replied calmly. "I'd like to check my account balance." Preston's smile tightened fractionally. Of course. But you see, ma'am, we have systems for routine transactions. Sarah here," he gestured to the representative, "can show you to our automated terminals, or you can check online or through our mobile app." "I don't use apps. I'd like to speak with a teller." "Ma'am." Preston's tone shifted, acquiring an edge beneath the politeness. "Our tellers handle complex transactions. For simple balance inquiries, we have multiple self-service options specifically designed to save our customers time. I have time." The response hung in the air. Around them, conversations continued, but Evelyn felt attention gathering like a storm front. Preston's smile had vanished entirely. "Ma'am, I'm trying to explain our procedures. And I'm trying to check my account. Evelyn shifted her weight on her cane. Is there a policy that prevents me from speaking with a teller? No, but Preston glanced around, aware now of the audience forming. His voice dropped lower. Look, I'm trying to help you here. The terminals are very simple to use. Even my mother uses them. Even. The word landed like a small detonation. Evelyn felt Marcus's voice in her head. Don't escalate, Grandma. Stay calm. But beneath it, she heard her own younger voice, the one that had swallowed 1,000 such words over 1,000 such encounters. I'd like to speak with a teller, she repeated. Preston's jaw tightened. Ma'am, I really don't have time for this. If you're having trouble understanding our systems, I understand perfectly. I'm a customer asking to check my account. That's not complicated. Then use the terminal. No. The single syllable dropped between them like a gauntlet. Preston stared at her, and Evelyn saw the exact moment his thin veneer of customer service shattered. His face flushed, his shoulders squared. When he spoke again, his voice carried across the lobby. Ma'am, I don't know what kind of establishment you think this is, but Crownstone National Bank serves serious clients with substantial assets. We have procedures specifically designed to streamline services for everyone's benefit. If you're unable or unwilling to follow basic protocols, I'm perfectly willing to follow protocols. I'm asking to check my balance with a teller, which is a standard service. For customers with accounts that warrant personal attention, yes. Preston's smile returned, but it was sharp now, cutting. But I suspect, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're not a regular customer here. Are you? Evelyn reached into her purse with deliberate slowness, found the worn bank card, held it up. Preston took it, his fingers barely touching the plastic as if it might contaminate him. He studied it with the expression of someone examining something distasteful. Then he laughed, actually laughed, loud enough to turn heads. This is... He held up the card so his earlier audience could see. This is from 15 years ago. We don't even use this logo anymore. The woman in Chanel covered her mouth, but not before a giggle escaped. The silver-haired man shook his head with exaggerated sympathy. Preston was playing to them now, his embarrassment transforming into performance. Ma'am, honestly, I think there's been a misunderstanding. This card is ancient. Are you sure you even have an account here? Because he flipped the card over, squinted at the faded numbers. I'm not sure this is even valid anymore. It's valid. When was the last time you used it? I don't see how that's relevant. I'm trying to help you. Preston's voice dripped with condescension. Look, I think maybe you're confused about where your account actually is. There's a community bank 3 blocks down, First Federal. They might be more appropriate for your needs. The lobby had gone quiet now. Real quiet. The kind of silence that had weight. Are you refusing to serve me? Evelyn asked clearly. I'm trying to direct you to the proper resources. Are you refusing to serve me? Louder now. Preston's face darkened. Ma'am, I'm not going to continue this conversation if you're going to be difficult. I've explained our procedures multiple times. If you're unable to follow simple instructions, I understand the instructions perfectly. I'm asking why you're refusing to provide a basic service. Because Preston caught himself, aware of how his voice had risen. He glanced around at the watching faces, recalibrated. When he continued, his tone was icily professional. Because, ma'am, I suspect very strongly that you are wasting everyone's time. I suspect you either don't have an account here at all, or you have some minimal account you opened decades ago and barely use. And I'm not going to tie up my staff for someone who can't even be bothered to get a current bank card. So check the account. Excuse me? You have the card. Check the account. See if I'm wasting your time. Preston stared at her. Around them, the lobby held its collective breath. Evelyn saw the calculation in his eyes. The desire to end this confrontation warring with the risk of embarrassment if he was wrong. But he wasn't wrong. Couldn't be wrong. Look at her. Fine. He turned to Sarah. Pull up this account. The representative fumbled with a tablet, her hands shaking slightly. She swiped the card, entered information. Waited. Evelyn watched her face as the data loaded. saw confusion flicker across her features, saw her eyes widen fractionally. "Sir, I think—" "What?" Preston snapped. "Maybe we should discuss this privately. Just tell me if there's an account." Sarah swallowed. "There is." Triumph flashed across Preston's face. "And the balance?" "Sir, really, I think—" "The balance, Sarah." The young woman looked at Evelyn, something like apology in her eyes. Or maybe recognition. "It's substantial, sir." "How substantial?" "Very substantial." Preston grabbed the tablet from her hands, stared at the screen. His confident smirk evaporated like morning dew. Color drained from his face. When he looked up at Evelyn, genuine shock had replaced his condescension. This can't be right." "But it is," Evelyn said softly. Preston's mouth opened and closed. He looked at the screen again, then at Evelyn, then at the screen. "There must be an error. It shows my account, which I'd like to check. With a teller." The Chanel woman had drifted closer, trying to see the tablet. Preston clutched it to his chest like a guilty secret. His earlier audience watched with naked curiosity now. The dynamics in the lobby had shifted, though most people didn't yet understand why. "Ma'am, Preston's voice had lost its edge. "I apologize for the confusion. If you'd like to follow me to a private office." "No." The word stopped him mid-gesture. "No?" he repeated. "I don't want a private office. I wanted to check my balance with a teller. You made that into a public spectacle. So we'll finish it publicly." "Ma'am, please, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "There's been no misunderstanding." Evelyn's voice remained level, but something in it made Preston step back. "You assumed I was poor, confused, not worth your time. You laughed at me, mocked my card, suggested I go to a more appropriate bank. You did all of that because of how I look. I never said—" "You didn't have to say it." Evelyn looked around the lobby, making eye contact with the watching crowd. "Everyone here heard exactly what you meant." The silver-haired man had the grace to look uncomfortable. The Chanel woman found something fascinating to study on her phone. The younger couple had disappeared entirely. But others had emerged, tellers who'd heard the commotion, customers who'd stopped mid-transaction, even a janitor who'd paused his work to watch. Preston seemed to be searching desperately for firm ground. "Ma'am, I truly apologize if I gave offense, but you have to understand, we get people in here all the time who are confused, who don't understand banking procedures." "Old people, you mean?" "I didn't say that. Black people." "That's not—" "Poor people. People you think don't belong here." Preston's face had gone from pale to red. "That's absolutely not what I—" "Look, this is getting out of hand. I've apologized. I'm happy to help you now. But I don't appreciate accusations of racism?" Evelyn supplied the word he was dancing around. "Ageism? Classism? Which one bothers you most?" "None of them apply here." Preston's voice cracked with frustration. "You're making this into something it's not." "Am I?" Evelyn shifted her weight, and for the first time, she let exhaustion show in her posture. Not weakness, exhaustion. The bone-deep tiredness of someone who'd been fighting this particular battle for 7 decades. "Because from where I'm standing, I walked into this bank as a paying customer and was immediately treated like I didn't belong. Was mocked. Was redirected. Was told I was too stupid to use a terminal, all before anyone checked whether I actually had an account." "You can't prove any of that." "I can," Evelyn said quietly. "I recorded every word." The silence that followed was absolute. Preston's eyes went to her purse, back to her face. Understanding and horror dawned in equal measure. You recorded this? Every word since I walked through that door. You can't—" Preston looked wildly around for support. "Is that even legal? In this state? Single-party consent. I'm perfectly within my rights." Evelyn reached into her purse, pulled out the small recorder, held it up so the red light was visible. "Would you like me to play it back?" Preston's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Anger, fear, calculation. "Ma'am, I really think we should discuss this privately." "Why? So you can make this go away? Convince me that what I experienced wasn't real?" Evelyn shook her head slowly. No. I've been made to feel small in private my entire life. If we're going to talk, we'll talk here. That's blackmail. It's documentation. Evelyn's voice remained steady. There's a difference. Preston seemed to realize he was losing control of the situation. He looked at Sarah, who stood frozen with the tablet. Get someone from legal down here, now. But before Sarah could move, the elevator doors at the far end of the lobby opened. A man emerged, mid-50s, black, in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that made Preston's expensive attire look pedestrian. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd earned his power rather than inherited it. Conversation stopped as he crossed the marble floor, and Evelyn saw recognition in the faces around her. Whoever this was, he mattered. He walked past the tellers, past the private banking stations, past Preston Caldwell, and stopped directly in front of Evelyn Carter. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Then slowly, respectfully, he smiled. Miss Carter, he said, his voice warm and rich. It's been far too long. Welcome back. Preston's mouth fell open. The lobby seemed to tilt on its axis. The man extended his hand, waiting patiently until Evelyn shifted her cane to shake it. His grip was firm but careful. I'm Leon Grant, Senior Executive Vice President and Board Member. I apologize that your visit has been complicated. Mr. Grant, Evelyn's voice remained steady, though her eyes had sharpened with interest. I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. No, I imagine you weren't. Leon turned to look at Preston, and the temperature in the lobby dropped 10 degrees. Mr. Caldwell, my office, immediately. Sir, I can explain. Immediately! The word cut like a guillotine. Preston opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. There's been a misunderstanding. That much is clear. The question is who misunderstood what? Leon's gaze didn't waver. My office. Now. Preston glanced at Evelyn, at the watching crowd, at the tablet still in Sarah's trembling hands. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the elevators with Leon following behind him. But Leon paused, turning back. Miss Carter, I'll be down shortly to address your concerns personally. In the meantime, he looked at Sarah. Would you please take Ms. Carter to the Heritage Room and get her anything she needs? And for God's sake, check her actual account balance. Yes, sir, Sarah whispered. The Heritage Room won't be necessary, Evelyn said clearly. I'm perfectly comfortable here. Leon studied her for a long moment, and Evelyn saw understanding pass between them. He nodded slightly. As you wish. I'll return as quickly as possible. He disappeared into the elevator with Preston. The doors closed, and the lobby exhaled like it had been holding its breath. Sarah approached Evelyn with the kind of careful respect one might show a live grenade. Miss Carter, I am so sorry. I had no idea. You didn't check, Evelyn corrected gently. That was the problem. No, ma'am, you're absolutely right. Sarah's hand shook as she held the tablet. Would you like me to read your balance? Please. Sarah swallowed, looked at the screen, looked at Evelyn. When she spoke, her voice carried across the marble lobby like a bell tolling. Checking account, $643,817.52. The gasps were audible. Evelyn stood perfectly still. Savings account, $2,368,412.18. More gasps. Someone dropped something that clattered on the marble. Sarah's voice had gone higher, almost mechanical as she read. Investment portfolio through Crownstone Wealth Management, $9,753,106.37. The Chanel woman had gone pale. The silver-haired man stared openly. Around the lobby, phones came out, not to make calls, but to record. And, Sarah's voice cracked, the Evelyn and James Carter Educational Endowment Trust, administered through this institution, $18,924,638.94. The silence that followed was holy, religious, the kind of silence that accompanies revelation. Evelyn Carter, in her navy dress and worn shoes, with her faded bank card and wooden cane, stood in the center of that marble cathedral and let the numbers sink into every watching face. Thank you, she said quietly to Sarah. That's exactly what I needed to know. But Sarah wasn't done. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, her professional composure completely shattered. Miss Carter, I am so sorry. I should have checked. I assumed. Yes, Evelyn said, not unkindly. You did. That's what I came here to prove. She turned slowly, looking around the lobby at all the faces staring at her with new understanding. The wealthy clients who'd smirked, the security guards who'd tracked her movement, the staff who'd dismissed her. She saw shame in some expressions, shock in others, fear in a few who realized they'd been recorded, their reactions captured. My husband James and I started with nothing, Evelyn said, her voice carrying without being raised. He worked for the post office for 40 years. I cleaned houses, offices, buildings exactly like this one. We saved every penny we could. We invested carefully. We lived below our means, and when James died 5 years ago, he left me with instructions. Use what we built to help kids who look like we did get opportunities we never had. She paused, letting the words settle. That endowment has put 63 students through college. Full rides, books, room and board, everything. Because James and I knew what it was like to be smart and poor and black in a world that assumed those things meant you didn't matter. The lobby had become a church, and Evelyn was preaching. I came here today with an old card and old clothes because I wanted to see how I'd be treated when I didn't look wealthy. When I looked like what I actually am, a 90-year-old black woman who grew up poor, and every single person here showed me exactly what I expected to see. She looked at the phones recording her, looked at the shame and the shock and the fear. The money doesn't make me valuable, she said softly. I was valuable before anyone knew I had it. Every person who walks through that door is valuable. But somewhere along the way, places like this forgot that. You started treating people like their bank balance determined their humanity. The elevator dinged, every head turned. But it wasn't Preston or Leon. It was a young black man in a bank uniform, a teller judging by his name tag, who'd been watching from his station. He approached Evelyn with something like reverence. Ms. Carter, His voice cracked. Thank you. My sister's at Howard University right now on the Carter Scholarship. She's pre-med. Because of you. Evelyn's stern expression softened. What's her name, honey? Jasmine. Jasmine Crawford. I remember her application, smart girl. She wrote about wanting to open a clinic in underserved communities. The young man's eyes filled. That's still her dream. Because of you. No. Evelyn reached out, touched his arm gently. Because of her. The money just opened a door. She's the one walking through it. The elevator dinged again. This time it was Leon, alone. His face was unreadable as he crossed the lobby, but Evelyn saw something in his posture that spoke of thunderstorms barely contained. Ms. Carter, he said formally, would you do me the honor of a brief conversation? I promise it won't be long, and you're welcome to record every word. Evelyn studied him, saw genuine respect in his eyes, saw something else too, recognition, the kind that only came from shared experience. All right, Mr. Grant, let's talk. Leon led Evelyn toward a private conference room off the main lobby, but she stopped halfway there, her cane planted firmly on the marble. Here is fine, she said. Leon turned back, surprise flickering across his composed features. Ms. Carter, I thought you might prefer... I've had enough of privacy being used as a muzzle. Evelyn's voice carried that same quiet steel. Whatever you need to say to me, you can say it where people can hear. For a moment, Leon simply looked at her. Then slowly, a smile touched the corners of his mouth. Not the professional banking smile, but something genuine. You know what? You're absolutely right. He gestured to a seating area near the windows, visible to the entire lobby, but far enough from the teller stations to allow conversation. Would this work? That'll do. They settled into the leather chairs, Leon sitting forward with his hands clasped, Evelyn maintaining her upright posture despite the softness of the cushion. Around them, the lobby had resumed its business, but Evelyn could feel attention gravitating toward them like iron to a magnet. Phones were still out. People were still watching. Good. First, Leon said, I need to apologize. Not just for Preston Caldwell's behavior, though God knows that requires its own reckoning, but for the institution, for systems we've built that allow situations like this to happen. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I saw the last 5 minutes on the security feed before I came down. What I saw was inexcusable. You saw 5 minutes, Evelyn replied. I lived 73 years of it. The words landed like a physical blow. Leon sat back slightly, absorbing them. You're right, and I won't insult you by claiming to fully understand what that means. But I do know something about walking into rooms where people have already decided you don't belong. Evelyn studied him with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. You're a senior executive, board member. You've made it. I'm 56 years old, Ms. Carter. I've been in banking for 32 years, and I still walk into rooms where colleagues call me articulate, like it's a surprise. Where clients ask to speak to someone else before they learn my title. Where I have to work twice as hard to be seen as half as competent. He leaned forward again. So no, I don't know exactly what you've experienced, but I know enough to recognize it when I see it, and what happened to you today can't happen again. Can't? Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Or shouldn't? Both, because I'm going to make sure of it. Big words, Mr. Grant. I've heard a lot of big words in 90 years. I know, which is why I'm not going to waste your time with promises. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen, starting right now. Leon pulled out his phone, tapped it twice, and set it on the small table between them. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for 6 o'clock tonight. Preston Caldwell will be suspended pending a full investigation. That's not negotiable. Suspended with pay, I imagine. Standard procedure during investigations, yes. But Ms. Carter, I've been looking for a reason to remove Preston for 2 years. He's a legacy hire. His grandfather helped found this bank. His father sat on the board for 30 years. He got his position because of his last name, not his competence. And he's been a liability since day one. Just not enough of one to actually fire. Leon's jaw tightened. Not without cause that would stand up to legal scrutiny. His family still holds significant shares. But what he did today, on camera, with witnesses, he shook his head. He handed me cause on a silver platter. So I'm useful to you. That's not... Leon stopped himself, recognizing the trap. Yes. If I'm being completely honest, what happened today gives me leverage I haven't had before. But that doesn't mean my outrage isn't genuine. Both things can be true. Evelyn appreciated the honesty. What about the girl, Sarah? What about her? She going to be punished too? Leon looked surprised by the question. She followed Preston's lead. She's young, inexperienced. She also apologized, genuinely, and she's the one who told me about my granddaughter's scholarship application 3 years ago when it got stuck in processing, made sure it got to the right desk. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. You want to know what institutional change looks like, Mr. Grant? It's not punishing everyone who makes a mistake. It's figuring out who has the capacity to learn and grow, and who's fundamentally incapable of it. Leon studied her for a long moment. You're saying Sarah gets training, not termination. I'm saying she gets a chance. Same chance someone gave you once, I'm guessing. A flicker of something, memory perhaps, crossed Leon's face. When I was 24, I told a Latina customer her English was pretty good. I meant it as a compliment. She'd been born in San Diego and spoke better English than I did. My manager could have fired me. Instead, he sat me down and explained exactly why what I'd said was offensive. Made me think about my assumptions, changed how I saw the world. He looked at Evelyn. You're right. Sarah gets training. Good. Evelyn shifted her cane. Now tell me what you're really worried about. Excuse me? You didn't come down here just to apologize and fire Preston. You're worried about something. I can see it in your shoulders. Leon let out a long breath. The recording. Ah. Ms. Carter, you're well within your rights to post that anywhere you want, but I'm asking, not as a bank executive, but as someone who cares about this institution, please give me 72 hours before you do anything with it. Why? Because if that video goes viral while Preston's still technically employed here, it'll look like we're protecting him. But if we've already taken action, already started implementing changes, it shows we took this seriously. It gives us a chance to control the narrative. Control the narrative, Evelyn repeated slowly. That's what you're worried about? Not justice, not making things right, public relations. That's not fair, isn't it? Evelyn's voice hardened. You want me to give you time to make this look good for the bank, to protect your reputation, your stock price, your board seats. I want time to make meaningful changes that actually stick, Leon countered. You post that video today, we get crucified on social media for a week, Preston gets fired, everyone feels good, and then what? We hire another Preston. We implement some token diversity training that nobody takes seriously. We put out a press release about our commitment to inclusion. And in 6 months, we're right back where we started. And you think you can do better? I think I have to try. Leon's voice carried genuine passion now. Ms. Carter, I became the first Black senior executive at this bank 3 years ago. Do you know how many applications I've seen from qualified Black candidates since then? Hundreds. Do you know how many we've hired? 8. 8 out of hundreds. Because people like Preston Caldwell sit on hiring committees and make the same assumptions about applications that they make about customers. He stood, pacing now, the careful composure cracking. I've been fighting this battle from the inside, trying to change minds one conversation at a time, and it's like pushing water uphill with a rake. But what happened today, what you documented, that's leverage, real leverage, the kind that can force changes that stick, but only if I have time to use it properly. Evelyn watched him pace, seeing the frustration and determination warring in his movements. You're asking me to trust you. I know I haven't earned that right. No, you haven't. But you're also the first person in this building who's talked to me like I'm a human being instead of a problem to manage. She pulled the recorder from her purse, held it up. 72 hours, Mr. Grant. That's 3 days. You've got until Friday at 5 p.m. After that, this goes to every news outlet and social media platform I can find. Thank you. I'm not finished. Evelyn's voice cut through his gratitude. I want weekly updates on what's being changed. And I want to see the actual policies, not PR summaries. I want to know who's being hired, who's being trained, and who's being shown the door. You want to use what happened to me as leverage? Fine. But I'm going to make damn sure it actually gets used. Leon nodded slowly. That's more than fair. I'll set up, and one more thing. Evelyn stood, using her cane for balance. I want to speak to Preston Caldwell. The request hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Leon's eyes widened. Ms. Carter, I don't think that's advisable. He's already been suspended. He's extremely upset. I didn't ask if it was advisable. I said, I want to speak to him. To what end? That's between him and me. Leon hesitated, conflict clear on his face. If he says anything that could be construed as threatening, or if he tries to pressure you, Mr. Grant. Evelyn's tone was patient but firm. I survived Jim Crow. I survived integration. I survived my husband's death and raised 3 children on my own. I think I can survive a conversation with a spoiled white man who just lost his favorite toy. Despite the tension, Leon almost smiled. Where would you like to meet him? Right here, in this lobby, where everyone can see. You really don't believe in privacy, do you? Privacy is what lets men like Preston Caldwell pretend the quiet parts aren't real. I'm done with privacy. Evelyn settled back into her chair. Go get him. Leon looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Evelyn's expression told him it would be futile. I'll be watching from my office. If anything seems wrong, then you'll have it on camera. Now go. Leon left, and Evelyn sat in that leather chair in that marble lobby and felt the weight of eyes on her from every direction. The young teller whose sister she'd put through college kept glancing over. Sarah stood near her station, still looking shattered. The wealthy clients had mostly drifted away, replaced by regular customers who'd heard whispers of what happened and came to watch the aftermath. Evelyn thought about James, about the night 40 years ago when he'd come home from the post office with his jaw tight and his hands shaking, about how he'd sat at their kitchen table and told her about the promotion he'd been passed over for, given instead to a white man with half his experience, about the quiet rage in his voice when he said, I'm tired of being invisible, Evie. I'm tired of working twice as hard for half the recognition. They'd made a decision that night, a A quiet decision, but one that shaped everything that came after. If the world was going to treat them as less than, they'd build something so substantial it couldn't be ignored. They'd save and invest and grow their money not for luxury, but for power. The power to change things, the power to open doors, the power to make people see. The elevator dinged. Preston Caldwell emerged, and Evelyn felt a satisfaction bloom in her chest at the sight of him. His earlier confidence had evaporated like morning fog. His tie was loosened, his hair mussed, his face blotchy with what might have been tears or rage or both. Leon walked beside him, a protective presence, and they crossed the lobby in heavy silence. Preston stopped a few feet from Evelyn's chair, his hands hanging at his sides like he didn't know what to do with them. Leon positioned himself nearby, but far enough to give space. "Miss Carter," Preston began, his voice hoarse. "I've been instructed to—" "Sit down," Evelyn interrupted. Preston blinked. "I'd prefer to stand. I'm 90 years old and my back hurts. Sit down." The command in her voice was absolute. Preston glanced at Leon, who nodded curtly. Slowly, Preston lowered himself into the chair across from Evelyn, perching on the edge like he might bolt at any moment. "Do you know why I wanted to talk to you?" Evelyn asked. "To humiliate me further, I imagine." The words came out bitter. "If I wanted to humiliate you, I'd post that recording right now and let the internet do its work." "No, Mr. Caldwell. I wanted to look at you. Really look at you." Preston's eyes flicked up, then away. "I don't understand. I want to understand who you are. What made you into someone who could treat another human being the way you treated me today?" Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "So I'm going to ask you some questions, and you're going to answer them honestly. Can you do that?" "I don't see why I should, because if you don't, that recording goes public in the next 5 minutes instead of 3 days. Your choice." Preston's jaw worked. He glanced at Leon again, but found no rescue there. "Fine. What do you want to know?" "How old are you?" 46. "Married?" "Divorced, 2 years ago." "Children?" 2. A son and a daughter. They live with their mother." "Do you see them often?" Preston's face tightened. "Not as often as I'd like. She moved to Portland, says the schools are better there." "That must be hard." The empathy in Evelyn's voice seemed to surprise him. "It is, he admitted quietly. "What did you want to be when you grew up?" The question caught Preston off guard. "What?" "When you were a child, what did you dream about becoming?" A musician. I played piano, wanted to study at Juilliard." A bitter laugh. "My father said that was a hobby, not a career. Told me I was joining the family business whether I liked it or not." "Did you like it?" Preston was quiet for a long moment. "No, I hate banking, hate the politics, hate the performance, but it's what I know. It's what my name means." "Your name means something because your grandfather built something and your father maintained it. What have you built?" Preston stopped, started again. "I've maintained the standard, kept the family legacy." "You've maintained nothing but your own comfort," Evelyn said, not unkindly. "You walked into a position you didn't earn because of a name you inherited, and somewhere along the way you started believing that made you better than other people." "That's not true." "Then explain what happened today. Explain why you looked at me and saw someone worth mocking." Preston's face flushed. "I made a mistake. I apologized." "No, you got caught. That's different." Evelyn held his gaze. "Do you know what I see when I look at you, Mr. Caldwell?" "I see a scared man. A man who knows, deep down, that he hasn't earned his position, that he's been playing a role his entire life. And when I walked in here today, an old black woman in worn clothes with a faded card, I represented everything you've been taught to look down on. Because if people like me could have worth, could have value, then your entire worldview collapses. The hierarchy that keeps you comfortable stops making sense. You don't know anything about me. I know men like you. I've cleaned their offices, raised their children, listened to them talk about their fears late at night when they thought the help wasn't really listening." Evelyn's voice remained steady. "You're not evil, Preston, but you're cowardly. And cowardice in positions of power causes tremendous harm." Preston's hands clenched on his knees. What do you want from me? I want you to understand what you took from me today. Not the time, not the inconvenience, but the dignity. As Evelyn's voice grew softer, more dangerous. I want you to know that I spent 17 years cleaning offices in buildings like this one, that I scrubbed toilets while men in expensive suits walked past like I was furniture, that I saved every penny while people like you threw away more money on a lunch than I made in a week. I'm sorry. Let me finish. The steel was back. I want you to know that my husband worked 40 years without a single sick day, that we buried a daughter who died because we couldn't afford the medicine that might have saved her, that we built what we have through sacrifice and discipline you couldn't begin to imagine. And when I walked in here today, all of that history, all of that worth was invisible to you because I didn't look like your definition of valuable. Tears were streaming down Preston's face now. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I don't want your tears. I want you to change. I don't know how to start by asking questions, by listening, by considering that your first assumption about someone might be wrong. Evelyn reached into her purse, pulled out a business card, and handed it to him. This is my grandson, Marcus. He runs a nonprofit that helps formerly incarcerated people find employment. Your severance package, and yes, you will be severed from this bank, is going to be substantial. I want you to donate half of it to his organization. Preston stared at the card. Why would you want my money? I don't, but I want you to put your resources where your remorse is. I want you to spend the next year volunteering with people you'd normally cross the street to avoid. I want you to learn that worth isn't measured in account balances. And if I don't, then you'll spend the rest of your life being the villain in a viral video, the cautionary tale, the example of everything wrong with banking culture. Evelyn leaned back. Or you can choose to become something different, someone who made a terrible mistake and spent the rest of his life trying to balance the scales. Your choice. Preston looked at the card in his hand like it was a life raft. Will you keep the recording private if I do this? I'll keep it private for 72 hours regardless. What you do with this opportunity determines what happens after that. But Preston, she waited until he looked up at her. I'm not doing this to give you a way out. I'm doing this because I believe people can change, and because I'm tired of revenge. I want repair. The lobby had gone silent around them, every person within earshot hanging on the conversation. Preston stood slowly, the business card clutched in his hand. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I don't deserve your mercy. No, Evelyn agreed. You don't. But mercy isn't about deserving. It's about deciding that breaking the cycle matters more than perpetuating it. Preston nodded once, then turned and walked toward the elevators with his shoulders hunched like an old man. Leon watched him go, then approached Evelyn's chair. He seemed to search for words. Remarkable. That was exhausting, Evelyn corrected. She felt her age now, felt the weight of the confrontation settling into her bones. I need to go home, Mr. Grant. Of course. Let me arrange. I'll take a cab. Please, let me at least have a car take you. After everything, Evelyn considered arguing, then recognized the genuine concern in his face. All right, thank you. While Leon made arrangements, Sarah approached hesitantly. Her eyes were still red. Ms. Carter, I just wanted to say, I'm going to do better. I'm going to be better. I know you will, honey. We all stumble. What matters is whether we stay down or stand up. I won't let you down. Don't make promises to me. Make them to yourself. Evelyn stood, accepting Leon's steadying hand on her elbow. And to the next person who walks through that door looking like they don't belong. The car Leon arranged was a town car with a driver who treated Evelyn like visiting royalty. As they pulled away from Crownstone National Bank, Evelyn looked back at the glass and marble building and felt something shift in her chest. Not satisfaction exactly, not victory, something more complex. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, of course. The text was all capital letters. Grandma. Are you okay? Someone posted a video. It's everywhere. Evelyn stared at the message, then looked at the driver. Excuse me, but could you pull over? Yes, ma'am. Is everything all right? I need to make a call. She dialed Marcus, who answered on the first ring. Grandma, what the hell happened? Are you safe? I'm looking at this video and... What video, baby? I haven't posted anything yet. Someone else did. Someone in the lobby was recording on their phone. It's on Twitter, TikTok, everywhere. Elderly black woman reveals millions after bank president mocks her. It's got 2 million views already. Evelyn closed her eyes. So much for 72 hours. What's the response? People are furious. They're calling for boycotts. They're tagging the bank's accounts. Grandma, you're trending. I'm what? Trending. People are calling you a hero, and they're destroying Preston Caldwell. Someone found his LinkedIn, his Facebook, everything. They're posting it everywhere. Evelyn felt something cold settle in her stomach. This was what she'd wanted, wasn't it? Accountability. Exposure. Change. But hearing about it secondhand, about the internet mob descending on Preston Caldwell's life, she felt something more complicated than triumph. Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Find out who posted that video. Get me their information. Why? Because I need to make sure this doesn't spiral into something uglier than it already is. She hung up and called Leon Grant. He answered immediately, his voice tight. Miss Carter, I assume you've heard. I just found out. That wasn't me. I know. We pulled security footage. 3 different customers recorded on their phones. One of them posted before leaving the building. He let out a long breath. The board's in emergency session now. Preston's been terminated effective immediately. Our PR team is drafting statements. It's a full crisis. Good, Evelyn said. Then, surprising herself, added, I'm sorry. Sorry? I wanted accountability, not destruction. There's a difference. With respect, Ms. Carter, he earned what's happening to him. Maybe, but his children didn't. His ex-wife didn't. The junior employees at that bank who had nothing to do with this didn't. Evelyn watched the city pass by her window. I wanted to change the system. I'm worried we've just fed the outrage machine. Then help me channel it into something productive. Your 72 hours is gone, but your voice isn't. If you make a statement, I'm 90 years old and I'm tired, Mr. Grant. I need to go home and think. She paused. But yes, tomorrow. I'll make a statement tomorrow. One that focuses on what needs to change, not on who needs to burn. Thank you. And Ms. Carter, for what it's worth, I think what you did today was incredibly brave. Brave would have been doing it 70 years ago. Today was just necessary. She ended the call and leaned back against the leather seat, feeling every one of her 90 years. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Ma'am, we're almost to your address. Is there anything you need? Evelyn looked out at the familiar streets of her neighborhood. The small houses with their tidy yards, the corner store where she'd bought milk for 40 years, the church where she and James had been married. This world, so far removed from marble lobbies and million-dollar accounts. This was where she belonged. This was home. No, honey, just get me home. I've had enough excitement for one day. But even as she said it, Evelyn knew the excitement was just beginning. The town car pulled up to Evelyn's small brick house on Maple Street just as the afternoon sun began its descent. The driver came around to open her door, offering his hand with a respect that felt earned rather than scripted. She took it, letting him help her navigate the 3 steps up to her front porch, her cane steady in her other hand. Thank you, she told him. You've been very kind. Ma'am, if I may... He hesitated, then continued. My mother's 78. Black woman, worked as a nurse for 40 years. What you did today, she's going to want to hear about this. Evelyn studied his face. Late 30s, kind eyes, the careful posture of someone who'd learned early to make himself non-threatening. What's your mother's name? Dorothy. Dorothy Williams. You tell Dorothy that what I did today, I did standing on the shoulders of women like her. Nurses who fought for dignity in hospitals that barely saw them as human. She's the real hero. The driver's eyes grew bright. He nodded once, unable to speak, then returned to the car. Evelyn watched him drive away before turning to her front door. The house James had insisted they buy back in 1983, when the neighborhood was still affordable and mixed, before the word gentrification became part of everyday vocabulary. Modest by today's standards, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. But it was paid off, maintained, and filled with 50 years of memories embedded in every wall. She'd barely gotten her key in the lock when her phone started buzzing, then buzzing again and again. By the time she made it inside and settled into James's old recliner, the one she'd kept even though the upholstery was worn threadbare, her phone showed 43 missed calls and over 200 text messages. Marcus, predictably, had called 15 times. Her daughter Jennifer had called 9. Her son Thomas 7. Old friends from church. Former colleagues from the cleaning service. People she barely remembered from decades ago, all suddenly wanting to reconnect. And reporters. So many reporters. She started with Marcus, who answered before the first ring completed. "Grandma, thank God. Where have you been? I've been losing my mind. I've been in a car, baby, getting home." "Are you okay? Really okay? Because this thing is exploding. CNN just called me asking for comment. CNN, Grandma." "What did you tell them?" "That I'd have to talk to you first. But Grandma, this is huge. People are organizing protests outside Crownstone branches. There's a hashtag, Justice for Evelyn. It's trending #1 worldwide. Someone started a GoFundMe even though everyone knows you don't need money. They're calling it the Evelyn Carter Challenge, donating to elder advocacy groups in your name." Evelyn closed her eyes, trying to process the scope. "It wasn't supposed to be about me." "But it is about you. You're the face of it now. Every old person who's been dismissed, every black person who's been judged, every woman who's been underestimated, they all see themselves in you." Marcus's voice grew intense. "Grandma, you could actually change things, real things, but you need to control the narrative before it controls you." "I don't want to control anything. I just wanted that bank to treat people better." "And now you have a platform to make that happen everywhere. Please, just think about it. I'm coming over. Don't talk to anyone until I get there." He hung up before she could argue. Evelyn stared at her phone, watching notifications pile up like snow in a blizzard. A text from Jennifer. "Mom, are you safe? Call me immediately." From Thomas. "Jesus Christ, Ma, what did you do?" From Leon Grant. "Miss Carter, the board would like to meet with you at your earliest convenience." And then a number she didn't recognize. "This is Preston Caldwell. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know I called your grandson. I'm volunteering, starting tomorrow. You were right about everything." She stared at that message for a long time. Preston Caldwell, reaching out less than 6 hours after the worst day of his professional life. Either he was genuine or he was desperate. Maybe both. Probably both. The doorbell rang. Then someone knocked. Then the doorbell again, more insistent. Evelyn hauled herself out of the recliner and checked the peephole to find a young woman with a microphone and a man with a camera. Reporter. She didn't open the door. "Miss Carter, I'm Rachel Kim from Channel 7 News. We'd love to get your statement about what happened today. Just a few minutes of your time." "Not interested," Evelyn called through the door. "Miss Carter, people want to hear your story. You could really make an impact." I said no. She heard them conferring, then footsteps retreating down her porch. But when she peeked through the curtains, she saw them setting up on the sidewalk, clearly planning to camp out. Another news van was pulling up across the street. A car with what looked like a podcast logo on the door was parking 2 houses down. Her phone rang again. This time it was Jennifer, and Evelyn knew her daughter wouldn't stop until she answered. "Hi, baby." "Mom, what the hell is happening? I'm getting calls from everyone. Someone from Good Morning America reached out to my office. My office, Mom." "I went to the bank, had a disagreement with the president. Someone recorded it." "A disagreement?" Jennifer's voice rose to a pitch that reminded Evelyn of when she was 16 and had just gotten her driver's license. "Mom, I watched the video. That wasn't a disagreement. That was racism. That was ageism. That man treated you like garbage. Yes, he did. That's why I recorded it. You—" Jennifer stopped, recalibrated. "You planned this. I documented it. There's a difference." "Mom." Jennifer's voice grew softer, more careful. "Are you okay? Really? Because I'm seeing these comments online, people calling you a hero, but I know you. This had to be hard." Evelyn felt her throat tighten. Of all her children, Jennifer had always been the most perceptive, the one who could read her moods from a single word. It was necessary, baby. That's different from hard. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. No, Evelyn admitted, they're not. I'm flying in tomorrow. Don't argue with me. Jennifer, you have work. I have personal time and a mother who just became a viral sensation. Work can wait. I'll be there by noon. A pause. I love you, Mom, and I'm proud of you. Dad would be too. The mention of James made something crack in Evelyn's carefully maintained composure. She swallowed hard. Thank you, baby. I'll see you tomorrow. After she hung up, Evelyn sat very still in the growing twilight of her living room. The house felt both too quiet and too full. Quiet of human presence, but full of memory and weight. She could feel James in every corner, could almost hear his voice commenting on the absurdity of news vans outside their house, of their quiet life suddenly becoming public spectacle. What do you think, old man? She whispered to the empty room. Did I do right? The silence offered no answers, but Evelyn hadn't expected any. James had been gone 5 years, and she'd learned to carry both his absence and his influence like a weight balanced perfectly on her shoulders. He'd have approved of what she did today. She knew that. But he'd also have worried about her, about the cost of becoming a symbol, about the price of being right in public. Marcus arrived 40 minutes later with takeout containers and a laptop bag. He let himself in with his key, took one look at the news crews outside, and immediately started closing all the curtains. This is insane, Grandma. You can't even see your own house anymore. They'll get bored eventually. I don't think so. This story has everything: race, class, age, money, justice. It's catnip for the news cycle. He set the food on the kitchen table, opened his laptop. I've been monitoring social media. Want to see what people are saying? Not particularly. You need to. Because there are two narratives forming, and you need to know about both of them. Marcus pulled up Twitter, scrolled through the trending hashtag. Most people see you as a hero. Look, this elderly queen walked into that bank and showed them what real wealth looks like. Evelyn Carter is everyone's grandmother, and we must protect her at all costs. Preston Caldwell's career is over, and he deserves it. And the other narrative? Marcus hesitated. Some people are saying you're rich and out of touch, that you only got justice because you could pull out bank statements. And what about poor people who get treated the same way? That this isn't really about systemic change, it's about one wealthy individual getting revenge. The words landed like stones in Evelyn's stomach. They're not entirely wrong. What? I did get justice because I had money. That's exactly the problem. The system only responded when I proved I was valuable by their standards. That's not justice. That's just switching who gets to be respected. Marcus stared at her. So what do you want to do? I need to think about that. Evelyn opened one of the takeout containers, Chinese food, her favorite from the place on 5th Street, but found she had no appetite. Tell me about the bank. What's happening there? Full meltdown. Preston Caldwell's been terminated. The board released a statement condemning his actions and promising a complete review of customer service policies. Stock price dropped 4% at closing, and Marcus pulled up another tab. Employees are coming forward. There's a whole thread on Reddit from people who worked there saying Preston had a history of this kind of behavior. Discrimination complaints that got buried. Minority employees who quit because of him. It's ugly. Good. Not good that it happened, but good that it's coming out. Leon Grant's been trying to get ahead of it. He did a press conference an hour ago, took full responsibility as senior leadership, announced Preston's termination, committed to policy changes. He mentioned you by name, said you showed tremendous grace under pressure. He's good at his job. He wants to meet with you. So do about 40 other people. I've been fielding requests all afternoon. Marcus scrolled through his phone. An OACP wants you to speak at their regional conference. AARP wants an interview. 3 different civil rights organizations want to give you awards. A publisher wants to know if you'd be interested in writing a book. A book? Evelyn couldn't help but laugh. I'm 90 years old. What would I write about? Are you kidding? Your life. This experience? The state of race and age discrimination in America. Grandma, people want to hear your voice. They want to hear a symbol that's different. Then be a symbol who speaks truth. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes intense. You have a chance to do something here. Not just change one bank, but start a conversation that actually matters. But you need to decide what you want to say. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment, turning over his words. Outside, she could hear the murmur of reporters, the occasional shout of a question directed at her house. Her sanctuary had become a stage, whether she wanted it or not. Set up a meeting with Leon Grant, she said finally. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., not at the bank, somewhere neutral. Where? Reverend Patterson's church, the fellowship hall. If Leon wants to talk about change, he can come to my community to do it. Marcus's face broke into a grin. That's perfect. I'll make it happen. And Marcus? I want you there. And Jennifer when she arrives. And Reverend Patterson. And Mrs. Chen from the Asian American Community Center. And David Rodriguez from the Latino Coalition. And she paused, thinking. Sarah, that young woman from the bank. I want her there too. Why her? Because she's the one who actually has to implement whatever changes Leon promises. And because she needs to see what real community accountability looks like. Marcus was typing furiously, making notes. This is good. This is really good. What else? I need to write a statement, something I can read that makes it clear this isn't about me getting revenge. It's about systemic problems that hurt everyone. I can help you draft. No. Evelyn's voice was gentle, but firm. Thank you, baby, but I need to write this myself. In my own words. Otherwise, it's just performance. They ate dinner together as the sky darkened and the news crews outside set up lights, turning Maple Street into a film set. Evelyn watched through a gap in the curtains, fascinated and disturbed by the spectacle. This was her life now, at least temporarily. The quiet elderly woman who'd lived in anonymity for decades had become, overnight, a public figure. After Marcus left, reluctantly, insisting she keep her doors locked and not answer for anyone, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pen. The pen was one James had used, a cheap ballpoint from the post office, and she'd kept it all these years because it still worked, and because it carried his energy somehow. She wrote slowly, crossing out words, starting over, finding her voice. The statement took 2 hours to write and came out to barely 2 pages, but every word felt true. She read it aloud to the empty kitchen, adjusting the rhythm, making sure it sounded like her voice rather than some polished PR creation. When she finally went to bed, it was past midnight. But sleep came hard, her mind turning over the day's events like stones in a tumbler. She kept seeing Preston Caldwell's face, the moment his confidence shattered, the tears streaming down his cheeks, the business card clutched in his hand like salvation. She kept hearing Leon Grant's voice, the careful calibration between corporate responsibility and personal conviction. She kept feeling the weight of all those eyes in the lobby, the mixture of shame and shock and recognition. And she kept thinking about Sarah, the young woman who'd apologized so genuinely, whose fear and remorse had been so transparent. That was the face of institutional racism, not just the Preston Caldwells who wielded power maliciously, but the Sarahs who went along because they didn't know better, who made assumptions because that's what they'd been taught to do, who hurt people without meaning to, but hurt them nonetheless. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from an unknown number. Ms. Carter, this is Jasmine Crawford, the teller's sister, the one you put through Howard on scholarship. I just wanted to say thank you, not just for the money, but for showing me today that dignity doesn't have a price tag. You changed my life twice now. Evelyn stared at the message until her eyes blurred. This was why it mattered. Not the viral video or the news coverage or the hashtags, but the young woman studying to become a doctor who learned that worth wasn't measured in dollars. She fell asleep with her phone still in her hand, James's pillow pressed against her side, and the sounds of Maple Street transformed into something she barely recognized beyond her bedroom window. Morning came too early, announced by Jennifer's arrival at 7:30 with coffee and determination. She let herself in, found Evelyn already awake and dressed in her navy dress, the same one from yesterday, because that felt important somehow, and immediately pulled her into a fierce hug. Mom, my God, Mom. I'm fine, baby. Stop fussing. You're trending on Twitter. You're not fine. You're famous. Jennifer pulled back, studying her mother's face. Are you sure about this meeting? More sure than I've been about anything in years. Jennifer had inherited her father's pragmatism and her mother's steel. She surveyed the news crews outside. They'd multiplied overnight, joined now by curious neighbors and what looked like protesters with signs supporting Evelyn, and started making calls. By 8:15, Marcus had arrived with Reverend Patterson, a 70-year-old black minister who'd known Evelyn for 40 years. By 8:30, Mrs. Chen and David Rodriguez had shown up, community leaders who understood what was at stake. At 8:45, Leon Grant's town car pulled up, followed by another car containing Leon, Sarah, and two people Evelyn didn't recognize. They assembled in the Fellowship Hall of New Hope Baptist Church, a space that had hosted everything from wedding receptions to civil rights meetings during the 60s. The walls held photos of the church's history, black faces and white faces, young and old, all part of the community's tapestry. It was deliberate on Evelyn's part, this location. Let Leon Grant see where real change had been forged. Leon entered with his characteristic dignity, but Evelyn saw his eyes taking in the space, the people, the history embedded in every corner. He'd brought Sarah, as requested, along with a black woman in her 50s and a young Latino man in his 20s. Ms. Carter, thank you for agreeing to meet. Leon gestured to his companions. This is Diane Thompson, our head of human resources, and Miguel Santos, who leads our community banking division. I thought their presence would be valuable. Appreciated. Evelyn gestured to the folding chairs arranged in a circle. Not a conference table setup. That would create hierarchy. A circle where everyone was equal. Please sit. They settled in, and Evelyn felt the weight of attention from every person in that room. Reverend Patterson sat to her right, Jennifer to her left. Marcus had positioned himself near the door with his laptop, ready to document. Mrs. Chen and David Rodriguez watched with the careful attention of people who'd fought their own battles with institutional discrimination. Before we start, Evelyn said, pulling out the recorder from her purse and placing it visibly on the folding chair beside her, I want everyone to know this conversation is being recorded. No one speaks off the record. No one makes promises they don't intend to keep. We're here because what happened yesterday was unacceptable, but more importantly because it's been happening for decades and will keep happening unless something fundamentally changes. Leon nodded slowly. I agree completely. And I want to start by apologizing not just for Preston Caldwell's behavior, but for the institutional culture that enabled it. Crownstone National Bank has failed in its commitment to serve all customers with dignity and respect. Pretty words, David Rodriguez said, his voice polite but challenging. I've heard pretty words before, usually right before nothing actually changes, which is why I brought specifics. Leon pulled out a tablet, but at Evelyn's slight headshake put it aside. Right, old school. I appreciate that. He pulled out paper documents instead. These are the policy changes we're implementing immediately. Every customer gets served by a teller for balance inquiries, no exceptions. Mandatory bias training for all customer-facing staff, conducted by outside experts, not internal HR. Mystery shopping programs where we send diverse customers into branches to test service quality. Quarterly reporting on customer complaints disaggregated by race, age, and apparent income level. And, he looked at Sarah, promotion tracks that don't favor legacy employees over qualified candidates from diverse backgrounds. Sarah shifted in her seat, uncomfortable with the attention. Evelyn studied the young woman. She looked like she hadn't slept, her eyes red-rimmed, her professional polish dimmed by genuine distress. Sarah, Evelyn said gently, how are you doing? The question seemed to surprise everyone, especially Sarah. I'm Ms. Carter. I'm so sorry about yesterday. I keep replaying it, keep seeing the moment I should have checked your account first, should have questioned Mr. Caldwell, should have trusted your instincts about what was right, Evelyn finished. But you were taught not to trust those instincts. You were taught to trust authority figures and established hierarchies. That's not your fault, honey. That's the system's fault. But I participated in it. I hurt you. Yes, you did, and now you get to choose what you do with that knowledge. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. Leon tells me you're going to be part of implementing these policy changes. That true? Sarah glanced at Leon, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, ma'am. I've been assigned to work with the training consultants, help them understand what actually happens on the ground. Good. That means you have power now, real power to change things. Evelyn held her gaze. But here's what I need you to understand. These policies Leon's talking about, they're important, but they're not enough. Because the real problem isn't policies, it's people. It's the assumptions we carry, the stories we tell ourselves about who deserves respect. I know that now, Sarah said quietly. Knowing isn't the same as changing. Change requires you to interrogate every assumption, every reaction, every moment when you think you know someone's worth before they've even spoken. It requires you to be uncomfortable, to recognize that sometimes the person you think doesn't belong is actually the person who belongs most. The room had gone very quiet. Mrs. Chen spoke up, her accent slight but her words precise. My family came to this country in 1968. My father owned a laundromat. Every week he went to the bank to deposit his earnings, and every week they counted his money 3 times like they expected him to cheat. 40 years. He died still expecting disrespect. She looked at Leon. Will these changes fix that? Or will they just teach people to hide their contempt better? I can't promise perfection, Leon said honestly, but I can promise accountability. The mystery shopping program means that if employees continue to treat customers with disrespect, there will be consequences, and those consequences will be public. Who runs the mystery shopping program? Reverend Patterson asked. Because if it's the same people who've been running things all along, you'll just get the same results with better paperwork. We're partnering with community organizations, Diane Thompson interjected, groups that represent diverse populations. They'll help recruit the mystery shoppers and analyze the results. Which organizations? Diane named several, including some Evelyn recognized and some she didn't. David Rodriguez nodded approvingly at a few of the names, but frowned at others. El Centro del Pueblo isn't on that list. Why not? We're open to adding organizations, Diane said quickly. This is just the preliminary list. In other words, you didn't think to include Latino advocacy groups until someone called you on it. David's tone was mild, but the accusation was clear. Diane had the grace to look embarrassed. You're right. We should have. Can you recommend some organizations? The conversation continued like this for nearly 2 hours, a dance between institutional representatives trying to prove their sincerity and community leaders testing that sincerity against decades of broken promises. Evelyn watched the dynamic shift and flow, occasionally interjecting a question or comment, but mostly letting others speak. This wasn't about her, no matter what the news coverage suggested. This was about generations of people who'd been dismissed, disrespected, diminished. Finally, when the conversation began to circle back to points already covered, Evelyn spoke up. Leon, I appreciate what you're trying to do. I believe you're sincere, but I need you to understand something. She paused, making sure she had everyone's attention. What happened to me yesterday happens every single day to people who don't have millions of dollars to prove their worth. Elderly people assume to be confused. Black people assume to be poor. Working class people assume to be stupid. And those people don't go viral. They don't get emergency board meetings. They just get hurt, and then they go home and carry that hurt into the next day. I know, Leon said quietly. Do you? Because from where I sit, the only reason we're having this meeting is because I could prove I was wealthy. Because I had leverage. If I'd actually been poor, if that account really had held $20 instead of $20 million, Preston Caldwell would have thrown me out and forgotten about me by lunchtime. That's the problem, Leon. Your bank only changed because embarrassment forced it to, not because treating people with dignity is inherently right. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Leon sat very still, and Evelyn saw something shift in his expression, the corporate executive giving way to something more raw, more honest. You're absolutely right, he said finally, and I don't know how to fix that. I can implement policies until I'm blue in the face, but I can't force people to see others as fully human. That's something deeper than policies can reach. Then maybe policies aren't enough, Reverend Patterson said. Maybe what you need is conversion. And I don't mean religious conversion, though the Lord knows that helps. I mean a fundamental transformation of how your institution sees its purpose. Is Crownstone a bank that serves communities or a bank that serves wealth? Both, Leon said, It has to be both to survive. No, Evelyn corrected. It has to be community first, wealth second. Because wealth is mobile. Rich people can bank anywhere. But communities are rooted, and if you lose community trust, you lose everything that actually matters. Miguel Santos, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. His voice was young but carried weight. Ms. Carter, what would you want us to do, specifically? Because I work in community banking, and I see exactly what you're describing. We have products for low-income customers, but our systems push them toward fee-generating accounts. We have Spanish-language materials, but they're translations of English documents that don't actually address Latino banking needs. We say we serve everyone, but our metrics reward us for attracting high-value customers. How do we actually change that? Evelyn looked at this young man who seemed genuinely hungry for answers and felt something shift in her chest. You start by listening to the communities you claim to serve, not focus groups where you ask people what kind of checking account they want. Real listening. Where you sit in places like this, she gestured around the fellowship hall, and ask people what barriers they face. What would make banking less intimidating, what they need that you're not providing. We do community outreach, Diane started. You do public relations, Mrs. Chen interrupted. You sponsor festivals and put your logo on banners. That's not the same as listening. Then teach us, Leon said. The words came out almost desperate. I mean that sincerely. Teach us how to listen properly, because I think we genuinely don't know how. The room fell silent. It was possibly the most honest thing Leon had said all morning. Evelyn studied his face and saw what she'd suspected from the beginning. A man who'd climbed to power in a system he knew was broken, trying to change it from the inside, and slowly realizing that inside might not be enough. All right, she said slowly. Here's what I propose. Everyone in the fellowship hall leaned forward slightly, waiting. Evelyn took her time, letting the moment stretch until it held weight. Crownstone National Bank is going to create a community advisory board, she said. Not a token committee that meets quarterly and rubber stamps decisions already made. A real board with actual power. Representatives from every community you serve, Black, Latino, Asian, elderly, working class, disabled, LGBTQ, everyone. And that board gets to review policies before they're implemented, gets to audit branch performance, gets to recommend hiring and firing, gets veto power over community banking decisions. Leon's eyes widened. Ms. Carter, with all respect, the bank's board of directors would never agree to that level of external oversight. Then they don't actually want change, they want cover. Evelyn's voice remained steady. See, this is the test, Leon, right here. Either you're serious about community accountability, or you're just doing damage control. There's no middle ground. What you're describing would fundamentally alter how we operate. Good. Because how you operate is fundamentally broken. Evelyn glanced at the others in the circle. Reverend Patterson, how long have you been fighting with banks to provide fair lending in Black neighborhoods? 40 years, the Reverend said heavily, since the Community Reinvestment Act passed, and we still have to fight for every dollar. Mrs. Chen, how many of your community members don't trust banks at all, keep their money under mattresses because they've been burned too many times? Too many to count, Mrs. Chen replied. They see banks as the enemy, as places that take but never give. David, what percentage of Latino small business owners get turned down for loans even when they have solid business plans? 73%, according to the last study. David's voice was bitter. Meanwhile, white business owners with worse credit get approved at twice the rate. Evelyn turned back to Leon. You want to fix Crownstone's image? Fix the actual problems. Give communities real power, not symbolic seats at tables where decisions have already been made. Otherwise, all your policies are just expensive theater. The silence that followed was heavy. Leon looked at Diane, at Miguel, and Evelyn saw the corporate calculation happening behind his eyes. This was too much, too radical. The board would never accept it. The shareholders would revolt. Every institutional instinct was screaming at him to find a compromise, a middle path, a way to appear progressive without actually ceding power. I need to be honest with you, Leon said finally. What you're asking for, it's not something I can promise. I have authority over bank operations, but something like this would require board approval. And the board, he stopped, seemed to wrestle with how much truth to reveal. The board is full of Preston Caldwell's relatives and people who think like him. They're already angry about his termination. They're going to fight me on every change. Then you need to decide whose side you're on, Jennifer said, speaking up for the first time. Her voice carried the sharp edge of someone who'd spent years as a corporate attorney navigating similar dynamics. You can't serve two masters, Mr. Grant. Either you serve the institution as it exists, or you serve the institution as it should be. Those things are incompatible. I'm trying to do both, and that's why nothing ever actually changes, Jennifer cut him off. I've seen it 1,000 times. Well-meaning executives who want to reform systems from within, but who won't risk their positions to make it happen. So they implement trainings and diversity initiatives and community partnerships, and nothing fundamental shifts because the power structure remains intact. Leon's face tightened. You don't know what I've sacrificed to get where I am. I know exactly what you've sacrificed, Jennifer shot back, because I've made similar choices. I'm the only black female partner at my firm. You think I got there by rocking the boat? By demanding structural change? No. I got there by playing the game well enough to earn a seat at the table. But here's what I learned. Once you're at the table, you realize it was never designed for you, and you can spend the rest of your career trying to make it more comfortable. Or you can flip the whole damn table over. Easy to say when it's not your career on the line, Leon said, but his voice lacked heat. My mother just put her dignity on display for the entire world, Jennifer replied. Walked into a bank knowing she'd be humiliated, recorded it, and used that humiliation as a weapon for change. Don't talk to me about what's easy. Marcus had been typing rapidly on his laptop, and now he looked up. The video's at 23 million views. Someone made a compilation of other elderly people sharing their stories of being dismissed at banks. It's got 8 million views, there's a movement forming, and Grandma's at the center of it whether she wants to be or not. He turned the laptop so Leon could see. People are organizing, planning protests, calling for boycotts of Crownstone and other banks. This isn't going away, Mr. Grant. The only question is whether Crownstone leads the response or gets crushed by it. Leon stared at the screen, at the compilation Marcus had pulled up. Video after video of elderly faces, black, white, Latino, Asian, telling stories of being patronized, dismissed, mocked. One white woman in her 80s described being told she was too old to understand online banking. A Korean man in his 70s explained how tellers spoke to him like he was stupid, even though he held a PhD in economics. A Latina grandmother wept as she described being accused of fraud when she tried to deposit her Social Security check. Jesus, Leon whispered. This is what my mother did, Jennifer said, her voice softer now. She didn't just record one incident. She cracked open a wound that's been festering for decades, and now everyone's seeing the infection. You can either help heal it, or you can watch it spread. Sarah had tears streaming down her face. I did this. I've been doing this. To how many people? How many people did I make feel small because I assumed... She couldn't finish. Her hands covered her face, shoulders shaking. Evelyn reached across the circle, touched Sarah's knee. Breathe, honey. Breathe. I can't... I just keep seeing their faces. I know. That's good. That means you're actually seeing them for the first time. Evelyn's voice was gentle but firm. But crying doesn't fix anything. Action fixes things. So dry your eyes and figure out how you're going to be different. Sarah looked up, her mascara smeared, her professional facade completely shattered. How? How do I fix this? You don't fix the past. You change the future. Evelyn glanced at Leon. Starting with this community advisory board. If Leon's serious about change, he'll need people inside the bank who actually believe in it, people who'll fight for it even when it's uncomfortable. I'll do it, Sarah said immediately. Whatever it takes. I'll do it. Miguel leaned forward, his young face intense. Me too. I've been trying to change things from inside community banking for 3 years, and I keep hitting walls. But if we actually had external accountability, if we had community members with real power, he looked at Leon. I think we could actually make this work. Diane Thompson had been quiet through most of the exchange, but now she spoke up. Her voice was measured, professional. Mr. Grant, I need to point out that what Ms. Carter is proposing would require significant legal structuring. We'd need to determine liability issues, decision-making authority, reporting structures. So structure it, Evelyn said. That's what lawyers are for, aren't they? Finding ways to make things legal? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You either want to do it or you don't. Evelyn looked at Diane directly. I've spent my whole life watching people hide behind complexity when what they really mean is no. Don't insult my intelligence by doing it now. Diane blinked, clearly unused to being challenged so directly. What Diane's trying to say, Leon intervened, is that this would be unprecedented. I'm not aware of any major bank that's given this level of oversight to an external community board. Then Crownstone gets to be first, Reverend Patterson said. Gets to set the standard instead of following it. Isn't that what real leadership looks like? Leon sat back in his folding chair, and Evelyn watched the war play out across his face. Ambition versus conscience. Career preservation versus moral imperative. The comfortable path versus the right one. She'd seen this conflict before, in different faces, different contexts. Most people chose comfort. The question was whether Leon Grant would be different. If I push for this, he said slowly, I'll probably lose my position. The board will replace me with someone more compliant. Probably, Evelyn agreed, but you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror. That's not nothing. I have a mortgage, 2 kids in college, a pension that vests in 3 years. And I had a daughter who died because we couldn't afford her medicine, Evelyn said quietly. I'm not unsympathetic to your concerns, Leon, but don't ask me to prioritize your financial security over systemic justice. The words hung in the air like a blade. Leon flinched as if he'd been struck. Around the circle, everyone sat in the weight of Evelyn's truth. This was the cost of change. Someone had to be willing to lose something. The question was always who and how much. Can I speak frankly? Miguel asked. When Leon nodded, he continued. Sir, I've watched you try to reform things from inside for 3 years, and you've made some progress. I won't deny that. But it's incremental, glacial, and meanwhile, people are being hurt every single day by policies and practices that we know are wrong. He paused. You taught me something once. You said the only way to know if you're actually committed to justice is to ask what you're willing to sacrifice for it. Well, I think we're at that moment. Miguel, I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm just saying we have a chance to do something real here. Something that could change not just Crownstone, but banking culture across the country. Because if we do this, other banks will have to follow or explain why they won't. That's leverage. That's power. Miguel's voice grew passionate. And yeah, it might cost you your job. But sir, with all respect, you can get another job. What you can't get is another chance to be on the right side of history. Leon looked at this young man who'd clearly idolized him, and Evelyn saw something crack in his composure. When did you become so idealistic? He asked, but his voice was fond rather than mocking. When I watched a 90-year-old woman walk into a bank and refuse to be invisible, Miguel replied. He looked at Evelyn. Ms. Carter, my grandmother raised me. She cleaned houses like you did, and I watched people treat her like she was nothing, like her decades of hard work meant nothing because she spoke English with an accent and had calluses on her hands. I became a banker because I wanted to change that, because I thought I could make the system better from inside it. His voice caught. But I was wrong. You can't reform a system that's designed to exclude. You have to rebuild it. You're 26 years old, Diane said. You haven't been in banking long enough to understand. I understand perfectly, Miguel interrupted. I understand that we've been doing things the same way for decades and expecting different results. That's not banking. That's insanity. Evelyn felt pride bloom in her chest. This young man, standing up to his superiors, risking his own career for principle. This was what change looked like. Not perfect people making perfect decisions, but flawed people choosing courage over comfort. Leon, she said, pulling his attention back to her, I'm going to tell you something my husband told me 50 years ago. He said, Evie, you can spend your whole life trying to fit into spaces that don't want you, or you can make your own space and invite others in. He chose to make his own space, became a union organizer, fought for better wages and conditions for postal workers, lost promotions because of it, made enemies. But he changed things, and at the end of his life, he had no regrets. And you? Leon asked. Do you have regrets? I regret every time I stayed quiet when I should have spoken, every time I accepted disrespect because it was easier than fighting, every time I made myself small to make others comfortable. Evelyn's voice was steady. But I don't regret yesterday. I don't regret this conversation, and I won't regret whatever comes next because at least I'm trying. The room fell into contemplative silence. Outside, Evelyn could hear cars passing, birds singing, the normal sounds of a Tuesday morning in a world that had no idea history was being negotiated in a church fellowship hall. She thought about all the moments that had led to this one, 73 years of small indignities and quiet resistance, of saving pennies and building wealth, of surviving in a system designed to diminish her. All of it had been preparation for this. Finally, Leon spoke. I need 48 hours to think, to talk to some people, to figure out if this is even possible. Who do you need to talk to? Reverend Patterson asked. Board members I think might be sympathetic, legal counsel who can structure this properly, other executives who've been pushing for change. Leon looked around the circle. I'm not saying no, but I'm also not saying yes yet. I need to understand what I'm walking into. Fair enough, Evelyn said. 48 hours. But Leon, I want to be clear about something. If you decide you can't do this, I'll find someone who can. I've got 23 million people watching what happens next. That's pressure I can apply in a lot of different directions. I understand. And if you do decide to do this, there's no half measures. Community advisory board with real power, or nothing. I won't settle for symbolic gestures. Understood. Good. Evelyn stood slowly, using her cane for balance. Then this meeting is adjourned. Everyone here, she looked around the circle. You're my witnesses. You heard what was proposed. You heard what was promised. Hold us all accountable. As people began to stand and gather their things, Sarah approached Evelyn with hesitant steps. Miss Carter, can I ask you something? Of course, honey. How did you... Sarah struggled for words. How did you walk into that bank yesterday, knowing what would happen? Knowing you'd be humiliated? I don't think I could do that. Evelyn studied the young woman's earnest face. You could if the alternative was worse. See, Sarah, for me the alternative was staying silent, was letting that treatment continue unchallenged, was dying someday knowing I had the power to change things and chose not to use it. She reached out, touched Sarah's arm gently. The humiliation hurt. Don't misunderstand that, but I've lived through worse, and I'd rather hurt for a purpose than be comfortable in my complicity. I want to be like you, Sarah whispered. No, you don't. You want to be like yourself, but braver. That's different. Evelyn smiled. Besides, you're young. You've got time to figure out who that person is. Will you? Sarah hesitated. Would you be willing to meet with me sometimes, to help me learn? Why would you want that? Because you see things I don't. You understand things I'm just beginning to learn, and I think... Sarah's voice grew stronger. I think if I'm going to help change that bank, I need to understand the people it's hurt, really understand. Not just intellectually, but in my bones. Evelyn considered the request. It would be time-consuming, potentially painful, would require reliving experiences she'd rather forget. But she looked at this young woman who was genuinely trying to grow, who was willing to be uncomfortable, and felt that same pull she'd felt with every scholarship recipient she'd ever supported. The pull toward possibility, toward hope. All right, she said, once a week. You come to my house, we talk. But Sarah, I'm not going to be gentle. If you want to learn, you're going to hear hard truths. I want that. I need that. Then we'll start next Tuesday, 6 o'clock. Don't be late. Sarah's face broke into a smile of such genuine gratitude that Evelyn felt her own expression soften. This was why she'd included Sarah in the meeting. Not because the young woman deserved forgiveness, she hadn't earned that yet, but because she demonstrated the capacity for growth. And growth, Evelyn had learned, was the only real path to change. Leon approached as Sarah left, and Evelyn noticed how much older he looked than he had at the start of the meeting. The weight of decision had carved new lines around his eyes. Miss Carter, regardless of what I decide, I want you to know, what you did yesterday was brave. What you're doing now is even braver. Not many people would use their platform for systemic change instead of personal validation. I'm too old to care about validation, Evelyn replied. I just want things to be better when I'm gone. They will be, because of you. No, because of all of us. Evelyn gestured around the emptying fellowship hall. Change doesn't come from individuals, Leon. It comes from communities deciding collectively that enough is enough. I just lit a match. Other people are building the fire. After everyone had left except Jennifer and Marcus, the three of them sat in the quiet fellowship hall. Jennifer had her arm around her mother's shoulders. Marcus was still on his laptop, monitoring the ongoing viral phenomenon. Mom, Jennifer said quietly, are you okay? Really? I'm tired, baby. Tired in my bones. But I'm okay. The media requests haven't stopped. Everyone wants to interview you. Good Morning America, The Today Show, 60 Minutes, even some international outlets. I need to make a statement, something official. Evelyn pulled out the pages she'd written the night before. I wrote this last night. Can you read it? Tell me if it makes sense. Jennifer took the pages, read slowly. Her expression shifted as she went through the text. Surprise, pride, and something deeper. When she finished, she had tears in her eyes. Mom, this is perfect. It's you, your voice, your truth. Read it to Marcus. See what he thinks. Jennifer read aloud, and Evelyn listened to her own words filtered through her daughter's voice. The statement was simple, direct. It acknowledged what had happened, but pivoted quickly to the larger issues. It called for systemic change while refusing to make Preston Caldwell a monster. It invited other people to share their stories while emphasizing the need for institutional accountability. And it ended with a challenge, not just to Crownstone, but to every institution that had grown comfortable with inequality. It's good, Marcus said when Jennifer finished. Really good. When do you want to release it? Now, before the narrative gets away from us completely. Okay, I can post it to social media, send it to news outlets. No. Evelyn shook her head. I want to read it myself. On camera. In front of the bank. Jennifer and Marcus exchanged glances. Mom, Jennifer said carefully, that's going to be a circus. Media everywhere, protesters, counter-protesters probably. Good. Let them all come. Let them hear me say this directly instead of filtering it through reporters and commentary. Evelyn stood, feeling determination override exhaustion. Call Leon. Tell him I'm going to be in front of Crownstone at 2 o'clock this afternoon. He can either join me or watch from his office. His choice. Marcus was already typing. I'll alert the media. This is going to be huge, Grandma. It's already huge. I'm just trying to point it in a useful direction. They spent the next 3 hours preparing. Jennifer helped Evelyn pick different clothes, not the navy dress, which was too associated with yesterday's humiliation, but a burgundy suit that Evelyn had worn to church for years. Strong colors, Jennifer explained. Photograph better. Marcus set up a simple backdrop and did a practice run with his phone to check lighting and sound. Reverend Patterson agreed to come stand beside Evelyn as moral support. Mrs. Chen and David Rodriguez said they'd be there too. At 1:30, they drove to Crownstone National Bank in Marcus's car. The scene outside was exactly what Evelyn had anticipated. News vans everywhere, cameras, reporters jockeying for position. But there were also regular people, hundreds of them. Elderly folks in lawn chairs like they were watching a parade, young people with signs, a group of black women who'd organized themselves into a human barrier to keep the media from getting too close. Someone had even brought a small PA system. When Evelyn emerged from the car, the crowd erupted. Not cheering exactly, but a sound of recognition, of solidarity. People pressed forward, and Evelyn felt the enormity of what she'd unleashed. These weren't just supporters. They were people who'd been waiting their whole lives for someone to name the thing they'd experienced, to validate the hurt they'd carried. Marcus and Jennifer flanked her as she made her way to the bank's entrance. Security guards stood inside, watching nervously. Evelyn looked up at the building's windows and wondered if Leon was watching, if Preston was somewhere seeing this. If Sarah was scared or inspired or both, someone handed her a microphone connected to the PA system. The crowd quieted, hundreds of faces turning toward her with expectation. Evelyn looked at them, black faces and white faces and brown faces, young and old, wealthy and poor, all united by the common experience of being dismissed. She thought about James, about the daughter they'd lost, about every person she'd ever cleaned houses for who'd looked through her like she was invisible, about the weight of 90 years carried in her bones. And then she began to speak. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 90 years old. Yesterday, I walked into this bank and was treated with disrespect because of how I looked. Some of you have seen the video, you know what happened, but what you might not know is why I did it. Her voice carried across the crowd, amplified but still distinctly hers. Cameras captured every word, reporters scribbled notes. But Evelyn kept her focus on the regular faces, the people who'd come because they saw themselves in her story. I didn't do it for revenge. I didn't do it to make one man suffer, though he is suffering, and that's his consequence to bear. I did it because I wanted proof. I wanted documentation. I wanted to create a moment so clear, so undeniable, that people couldn't look away from what happens every single day in places like this. She paused, letting the words settle. In the silence, she heard someone crying, heard murmurs of agreement, heard the click and whir of cameras capturing this moment for history. I'm going to read you a statement now. It's what I wrote last night in my own words, trying to make sense of all this. And then I'm going to answer your questions, not through reporters, not through press releases, directly. Evelyn unfolded the pages she'd written, her hands steady despite the weight of attention. And then in the shadow of the building that had tried to diminish her, she began to read. The words on the pages before her represented hours of careful thought, but as Evelyn began to read, they flowed with the natural cadence of truth spoken plainly. What happened to me at Crownstone National Bank was not unique. It was not exceptional. It was ordinary. And that's the problem. Every day, elderly people are treated like we're confused or incompetent. Every day, black and brown people are assumed to be poor or suspicious. Every day, working class people are dismissed as less worthy of respect than wealthy clients. This happens so routinely that we've stopped calling it what it is: systematic dehumanization based on appearance. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. I had an advantage that most people don't have. I had money. Enough money to prove my worth in the only language institutions like this understand. But here's what I need you to hear. I was just as valuable when I was 17 years old cleaning offices for minimum wage. I was just as deserving of respect when my husband and I were living paycheck to paycheck, raising 3 children in a 2-bedroom apartment. Human dignity should not be conditional on bank balances. The crowd was absolutely silent now. Even the reporters had stopped shuffling. Evelyn looked up from her pages, making eye contact with individuals in the audience. An elderly white woman nodding vigorously. A young black man with tears on his cheeks. A Latina in scrubs who must have come straight from work. Some of you are calling me a hero. I'm not. I'm a woman who got tired of being invisible, who decided that if I was going to be disrespected, at least I'd document it. Who had the resources and the platform to make noise about something that millions of people experience in silence. The real heroes are the people who endure this treatment every single day and still show up, still try, still believe things can be better. She turned a page, found her place. I'm calling on Crownstone National Bank and every financial institution to implement real change. Not diversity training that checks boxes. Not community programs that look good in annual reports. Real structural change that puts power in the hands of the communities you claim to serve. I'm calling for community advisory boards with actual authority, for transparent reporting on how different demographics are treated, for consequences when employees fail to provide equal service to all customers. The words felt heavier as she spoke them, weighted with decades of experience. But I'm also calling on all of us, everyone standing here, everyone watching online, to examine our own assumptions. Because the problem isn't just institutions, it's all of us. We've all made judgments about people based on appearance. We've all participated in systems that value some lives more than others. Change starts with honest acknowledgement of our own complicity. Evelyn paused, gathering herself for the final section. This was the part she'd rewritten 3 times, trying to find the balance between accountability and mercy. Preston Caldwell, the bank president who treated me with such disrespect, has lost his job. His name is now synonymous with discrimination. His career is effectively over. Some of you are celebrating that. I understand why. But I want to say something unpopular. I don't want his destruction. I want his transformation. I want him to become someone who understands that every person deserves dignity, regardless of their appearance or bank balance. I want him to use his privilege and his pain to help others learn and grow. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some agreement, some dissent. Evelyn expected that. I know some of you disagree. You think he deserves everything he's getting. Maybe you're right, but I've lived long enough to know that revenge doesn't heal anything. It just spreads the hurt around. What heals is accountability paired with the possibility of redemption. What heals is systemic change that prevents the next Preston Caldwell from causing harm in the first place. She was nearing the end now, could feel the weight of attention pressing down like physical force. To everyone who's been dismissed, disrespected, or diminished, your experience is valid. Your hurt is real, and you deserve better. Not because you're wealthy or accomplished or exceptional, but because you're human. That should be enough. In a just world, that would always be enough. Evelyn folded the pages, looked out at the sea of faces. I don't know what happens next. I'm 90 years old and tired and honestly overwhelmed by all this attention. But I know one thing, I'm not going to let this moment pass without pushing for real change. And I hope you won't either. Thank you. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds before the crowd erupted. Not applause exactly, though there was some of that. More like a collective release of emotion that had been building for generations. People shouted agreement, some wept openly. Others reached for the strangers next to them, needing human connection in the face of shared recognition. Marcus took the microphone. Ms. Carter will take a few questions now. Please be respectful. Hands shot up everywhere. Marcus pointed to an elderly black woman near the front. Yes, ma'am? The woman's voice quavered but held firm. Ms. Carter, I'm 83 years old. I've been treated the way you were treated more times than I can count. My question is, do you really think anything will change? Or is this just going to blow over like everything else? Evelyn appreciated the skepticism. It was earned. I don't know, she answered honestly, but I think we have a better chance than we've had before because we have documentation, we have visibility, and we have each other. Change doesn't happen because one person makes noise. It happens because enough people decide they're done accepting the unacceptable. Marcus pointed to a young reporter. What happens if Crownstone doesn't implement the changes you're demanding? Then I'll use every resource I have, and apparently I've got about 23 million people watching, to hold them accountable, and I'll encourage everyone to take their business elsewhere. Money talks. Let's make it say something that matters. Another hand, a middle-aged Latino man. Do you think other banks are watching this? Learning from it? I hope so. Because this problem isn't unique to Crownstone, it's systemic. But someone had to be first. Someone had to be the example. Crownstone didn't choose that role, but here we are. Now other institutions get to decide, learn from this, or become the next cautionary tale. The questions continued for 20 minutes, some angry, some hopeful, all earnest. Evelyn answered each one as honestly as she could, refusing to sugarcoat or spin. When a conservative blogger asked if she'd weaponized cancel culture, she didn't flinch. I weaponized accountability. There's a difference. Cancel culture is mob justice without due process. What I'm advocating for is documented evidence leading to institutional consequences. That's just justice. Finally, exhaustion began creeping into her voice. Jennifer stepped forward protectively. Last question, she announced. Marcus pointed to a young black woman in the back. Ms. Carter, what do you want your legacy to be? The question caught Evelyn off guard. She stood there, microphone in hand, thinking about legacy, about James and the daughter they'd lost, and the grandchildren who were building their own futures, about the 63 students she'd put through college, and the countless others she'd never meet who might benefit from what was happening here. I don't want to be remembered as the woman who got revenge on a racist bank president, she said slowly. I want to be remembered as someone who tried, who saw injustice and refused to accept it, who used whatever privilege and platform she had to make things a little bit better for people coming after her. That's all. Just someone who tried. The crowd had gone quiet again, hanging on her words. Evelyn looked at all those faces, faces full of hope and pain and determination, and felt the enormous responsibility of this moment. These people were looking to her for leadership, for direction, for proof that fighting back mattered. Don't wait for permission to demand dignity, she told them. Don't wait for institutions to decide you're worth respecting. You are worth it, right now, exactly as you are. And anyone who treats you otherwise is wrong. Document it when you can. Speak up when it's safe. Support each other always. That's how we change things, together. She handed the microphone back to Marcus and turned toward the car, but the crowd didn't disperse. Instead, people began lining up, a spontaneous receiving line of individuals who needed to speak to her, to touch her hand, to share their own stories. Evelyn was exhausted, wanted nothing more than to go home and sleep for 12 hours, but she couldn't refuse them. These people had driven across the city, taken off work, arranged childcare, all to be part of this moment. The least she could do was acknowledge them. An elderly Asian man, tears streaming down his weathered face. My wife died last year. The bank tried to tell me I couldn't access our joint account without extra documentation. Made me feel like a criminal. I never went back. A young white woman with a toddler on her hip. I'm a single mom. I went to apply for a loan in clothes for my cleaning job. They made me wait 3 hours, then told me I didn't qualify. But I saw them approve a white man in a suit who'd been waiting half as long. A middle-aged black man in a postal uniform. I knew your husband, James Carter. He helped me file a discrimination complaint 30 years ago. He told me to never accept being treated as less than. I've never forgotten that. You're carrying on his work. Each story landed like a weight on Evelyn's shoulders. Each face represented a lifetime of accumulated indignity. She listened to them all, held their hands, validated their experiences. It took over an hour, and by the end, she could barely stand. But she stayed until the last person had spoken, until every story had been heard. Finally, Jennifer and Marcus guided her back to the car. But before they could pull away, Leon Grant emerged from the bank. He moved through the dispersing crowd with purpose, and Evelyn rolled down her window as he approached. Ms. Carter. His face was drawn but determined. I've made my decision. And? I'm going to push for the Community Advisory Board. With real power, like you said. No half measures. He took a breath. The board's going to fight me. Some of them will try to force me out. But I talked to 3 board members who are willing to support this if I can show them it's financially viable. And I talked to our PR team, who pointed out that Crownstone's stock has actually gone up 3% today despite everything, because investors see an opportunity for leadership and corporate responsibility. So you're doing this for the stock price? I'm doing it because it's right. The stock price just makes it easier to sell to people who only care about money. Leon smiled slightly. You taught me that. Sometimes you have to speak the language people understand to get them to do the right thing. When will you present to the board? Emergency meeting tomorrow morning. I'll have a proposal ready tonight. And Ms. Carter, he hesitated, would you be willing to attend, to speak to them directly? Evelyn almost laughed. You want me to make nice with the people who protected Preston Caldwell? I want you to terrify them into doing the right thing. There's a difference. This time Evelyn did laugh, a genuine sound that felt good in her chest. All right, Mr. Grant. What time? 9 a.m. I'll send a car. No car, I'll drive myself. Need to make sure they understand I'm coming on my own terms, not as a guest they can control. Leon nodded, understanding. 9 a.m. boardroom on the top floor. And Ms. Carter, thank you for pushing me, for not accepting my excuses. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when the Community Advisory Board is actually functioning and making real decisions. He drove away, and Marcus finally pulled the car into traffic. The drive home was quiet. Evelyn leaned her head against the window, watching the city pass by. The same streets she'd walked for 70 years, but somehow they looked different now. Or maybe she was different. Maybe standing up publicly, refusing to be diminished, had changed something fundamental in how she moved through the world. At home, the news vans were still camped on Maple Street, but Marcus pulled into the garage so Evelyn could enter without being filmed. Inside, her phone showed over 300 missed calls. Her email inbox had crashed from the volume of messages. Social media tags numbered in the hundreds of thousands. You're going to need help managing all this, Jennifer said, scrolling through the requests. Maybe hire a publicist or at least an assistant. No, Evelyn was firm. The minute I hire handlers, this stops being about the message and becomes about the messenger. I'll do what I can and the rest will have to wait. She spent that evening with her family, Jennifer, Marcus, her son Thomas, who'd finally flown in from Denver, her other grandchildren who'd driven over. They ordered pizza and sat around her small kitchen table, and for a few hours, Evelyn wasn't a viral sensation or a symbol or a crusader. She was just mom and grandma, arguing about sports and laughing at old stories and being present with the people she loved. But even in those ordinary moments, her mind kept drifting to tomorrow, to the boardroom confrontation awaiting her, to all the Preston Caldwells sitting in seats of power, making decisions that affected millions of lives. This wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. The next morning, Evelyn woke at 6 and selected her clothes with even more care than before. The burgundy suit again. It had worked yesterday. James's watch, which she rarely wore, but which felt right today. And the pearl earrings, because they reminded her who she was before any of this started. She drove herself to Crownstone National Bank, refusing Jennifer's offer to accompany her. This confrontation needed to be one-on-one, her versus the institution. The building looked different in morning light. Less intimidating, somehow. Or maybe Evelyn was just done being intimidated. Leon met her in the lobby, accompanied by Sarah and Miguel. "The board is already assembled," he said. "Fair warning, they're not happy." "Good. Comfortable people don't change." The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. Evelyn could feel her heart pounding, adrenaline sharpening her senses. She'd been in fights before, with landlords, with employers, with systems designed to exclude her. But those had been smaller, more personal. This was different. This was walking into a room full of powerful people and telling them their power was being used wrong. The boardroom was exactly what she'd expected. Long mahogany table, leather chairs, walls lined with portraits of old white men. 12 people sat around that table, and only 2 of them were women. Only one was a person of color, Leon. The rest looked like they'd been cast from the same mold. 60s and 70s, expensive suits, expressions ranging from hostile to dismissive. "Gentlemen," Leon said, though his tone acknowledged the 2 women present. "This is Evelyn Carter. I've asked her to speak to you directly about—" "We know who she is," interrupted a man at the head of the table. Silver hair, florid face, the kind of confidence that came from never being challenged. "We've all seen the video. Very dramatic, Ms. Carter. But you've made your point. Preston's been terminated. What more do you want?" Evelyn remained standing, refusing the chair Leon offered. "My name is Mrs. Carter, not Ms. And what I want is for this institution to implement real systemic change, starting with a community advisory board that has actual decision-making power." "Absolutely not," said another board member, a woman with steel gray hair and a Hermes scarf. "We're not ceding institutional authority to external parties who don't understand banking." "You mean people who aren't wealthy and white," Evelyn corrected. "Say what you actually mean." The woman's face flushed. "That's not... I never said..." "You didn't have to." Evelyn looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes. "This room tells me everything I need to know about who makes decisions here. And here's what I know about people like you. You think privilege is something you earned rather than inherited. You think poor people are poor because they're lazy. You think black people talking about racism are playing a victim card. Am I getting warm?" "This is outrageous," started the silver-haired man. "What's outrageous is that you all sat on this board while Preston Caldwell discriminated against customers for years. You all received complaints. You all knew he was a liability, but you protected him because he was one of yours." Evelyn's voice remained level but carried steel. "Now you're angry because you got caught, not because you did wrong, but because it became public." "We have no obligation to listen to this," said a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses. "Security can escort you out." "Go ahead," Evelyn challenged. "Throw out a 90-year-old black woman on camera. I'm sure that'll play great when it goes viral." The man paled. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. The power dynamic in the room had shifted, and they all felt it. Leon stepped forward. "With respect, we do need to listen, because Mrs. Carter represents something larger than one incident. She represents generations of customers we've failed, and right now, the entire country is watching what we do next. So we let ourselves be bullied by public opinion? Asked another member. We let ourselves be guided by conscience, Leon countered. Something we should have been doing all along. Evelyn pulled out a folder she'd brought, copies of the Community Advisory Board proposal she and Leon had drafted last night. She placed a copy in front of each board member. Read this. It outlines exactly what I'm proposing. External oversight, community representation, transparent reporting, and real consequences for discriminatory behavior. It's not radical. It's just accountability. It's corporate suicide, muttered the silver-haired man, but he was reading the proposal. It's corporate evolution, Evelyn corrected, and you can either evolve or you can become extinct. Your choice. For the next 2 hours, they debated. The board members threw up every objection they could think of. Legal liability, shareholder revolt, operational complexity, competitive disadvantage. Evelyn countered each one, and she didn't do it alone. Leon provided financial projections. Miguel spoke about community banking trends. Sarah, surprisingly, gave an impassioned speech about wanting to work for an institution she could be proud of. But it was Evelyn who delivered the final argument. She waited until the board members were exhausted, talked out, running out of objections. Then she stood again, gathering their attention. You want to know the real reason you should do this? She asked quietly. Not because it's good PR, though it is. Not because it'll boost your stock price, though it might. Not even because it's morally right, though it absolutely is. She paused. You should do this because your grandchildren are watching. Your children are watching. And someday, they're going to ask you what you did when you had the power to make things better. What story do you want to tell them? The room fell silent. Evelyn saw something shift in several faces, not immediate conversion, but the first crack in their certainty. The thin man with glasses looked down at his hands. The woman with the Hermes scarf blinked rapidly. Even the silver-haired man's hostility had dimmed to something more contemplative. I have 3 grandchildren, Evelyn continued, and I want them to grow up in a world where people are judged by their character, not their appearance, where institutions serve communities instead of exploiting them, where power is accountable to the people it affects. Her voice grew softer. I don't have many years left, but you do. You have time to change things. The question is whether you have the courage. She gathered her purse, prepared to leave. Leon has my number. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, I start organizing boycotts and shareholder activism and every other tool available to someone with nothing left to lose. She moved toward the door, then turned back. And just so we're clear, I've already been contacted by 3 other banks interested in implementing similar programs. If Crownstone passes, someone else will lead. But you'll have missed your chance to be remembered as the institution that chose courage over comfort. Evelyn left the boardroom with her head high. In the elevator, Sarah caught up with her, breathless. Mrs. Carter, that was incredible. You made them see. I made them scared, Evelyn corrected. Fear's a start, but it's not the same as understanding. Real change takes time. Do you think they'll approve it? I think enough of them will. Evelyn looked at the young woman. You did good in there, honey. Spoke truth to power. That takes guts. I learned from the best. Sarah smiled tentatively. Tuesday at 6? I'll be there. Good. We'll start with the basics, like how to recognize your own assumptions before they hurt someone else. The next 48 hours were excruciating. Evelyn tried to go about her normal life, church on Sunday, grocery shopping, tending her small garden, but the waiting pressed on her like atmospheric pressure before a storm. Marcus monitored news coverage, which had shifted from outrage to speculation about what would happen next. Jennifer fielded interview requests. Thomas organized Evelyn's growing stack of mail, much of it letters from people sharing their own stories of discrimination. Wednesday morning, Leon Grant called at 7 a.m. The board voted last night. It took 6 hours of debate, but we got there. Evelyn's hand tightened on the phone. Got where? Approved. The Community Advisory Board proposal passed 8-4. We'll begin implementation immediately. Evelyn sat down heavily on her couch. She'd won. They'd actually won. What changed their minds? Honestly, you did. And also 3 board members' children who called them after seeing your speech. And also the 4 banks that have already announced they're implementing similar programs because they don't want to be seen as behind the curve. You started something, Mrs. Carter, something bigger than Crownstone. What happens to the 4 who voted no? They're staying on the board, but they're outnumbered now. And Mrs. Carter, Leon's voice grew warm. We'd like you to chair the Community Advisory Board, if you're willing. Chair it? Evelyn hadn't expected that. Leon, I'm 90 years old. And you have more wisdom and credibility than anyone else who could fill that role, please. We need you. Evelyn thought about it, about the time commitment, the energy required, the inevitable frustrations of institutional bureaucracy, about how much easier it would be to simply fade back into comfortable anonymity, about James and what he'd want her to do. I'll do it for 2 years, she said finally, enough time to get it established and train my replacement. After that, the board needs younger leadership, people who will be around to see the long-term results. Deal. Leon's relief was audible. There's a press conference scheduled for noon. Can you be there? I can be there. The press conference was held in Crownstone's main lobby, the same space where this had all started. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. News cameras packed the room, community leaders sat in the front row, and standing at the podium with Leon Grant was Evelyn Carter, preparing to announce that the fight had produced real, measurable change. Leon spoke first, outlining the Community Advisory Board's structure and authority. Then he invited Evelyn to the microphone. She looked out at the crowd and saw familiar faces. Mrs. Chen and David Rodriguez, Reverend Patterson, the young teller whose sister she'd put through school, Sarah standing near the back with tears streaming down her face. 5 days ago, I walked into this building and was treated with disrespect, Evelyn began. Today, I'm standing here as the chair of a board that will help ensure that never happens again, not just to me, but to anyone. That's what real change looks like. She spoke for 10 minutes about the work ahead, about the challenges they'd face, about her hope that other institutions would follow Crownstone's lead, but she ended with something more personal. My husband James used to say that justice delayed is justice denied. He spent his life fighting for dignity in the workplace, and I've spent mine fighting for dignity everywhere. This Community Advisory Board is a win, but it's not the end of the fight. It's just one battle in a war that's been going on for generations. Evelyn's voice grew stronger. So I'm asking everyone watching, don't stop here. Push for change in your own communities. Hold institutions accountable. Demand dignity. And never, ever accept that things are fine just because they're comfortable for some people. The questions from reporters lasted another 30 minutes. How would the board function? Who would serve on it? What enforcement mechanisms existed? Evelyn answered them all with patience and precision, making it clear that this wasn't symbolic, it was structural. After the press conference, Evelyn stood in that marble lobby and looked around. 5 days ago, this space had been hostile territory. Now it felt different. Not welcoming exactly, but less alien. She thought about all the people who'd walked through these doors feeling invisible, feeling dismissed. Thought about the battles still ahead, because one policy change wouldn't undo centuries of inequality. But it was a start, a real start. 3 months later, Evelyn sat in a conference room on the 3rd floor of Crownstone National Bank. Not the top floor boardroom, but a more modest space, with the 12 members of the Community Advisory Board. 6 of them were community leaders she'd recruited. Reverend Patterson, Mrs. Chen, David Rodriguez, 2 disability rights advocates, and a representative from the LGBTQ Community Center. 6 were bank employees, including Sarah and Miguel. Together, they were reviewing customer complaint data from the past quarter. The numbers are improving, Miguel reported. Complaints about discriminatory treatment are down 40% across all demographics. Down 40%? Or down 40% in reporting? Mrs. Chen asked pointedly. Because people might just be afraid to complain. Valid concern. That's why we implemented the anonymous reporting system. And we're seeing an increase in anonymous complaints, which actually suggests people feel safer reporting. What are the complaints about? Evelyn asked. Still getting some issues with age-related dismissiveness, some racial profiling in loss prevention, A few incidents of staff speaking condescendingly to customers with developmental disabilities. "So we're not done," Evelyn said. "We're not done," Miguel agreed. "But we're better. That counts for something." It did count. Over the past 3 months, Evelyn had seen real changes ripple through Crownstone. Staff turnover had actually increased initially as employees who couldn't adapt to the new culture left. But applications from diverse candidates had tripled. Customer satisfaction scores were up. And crucially, 5 other major banks had announced similar community advisory board programs. Preston Caldwell's name had faded from headlines, replaced by new outrages and controversies. Evelyn had heard through Marcus that Preston was indeed volunteering at the reentry program, working with formerly incarcerated people seeking employment. Whether that represented genuine change or just damage control, Evelyn didn't know. But she'd meant what she'd said. She wanted transformation, not destruction. After the meeting ended, Sarah approached Evelyn. Their Tuesday evening sessions had become a fixture, and Sarah had grown visibly in confidence and awareness. "Mrs. Carter, I wanted to show you something." She pulled out her phone, opened an email. "I got accepted to graduate school, social work program. I'm going to specialize in institutional racism and organizational change." Evelyn felt pride bloom in her chest. "Sarah, that's wonderful. It's because of you. You showed me there was more to life than just keeping my head down and following rules. You showed me I could actually make a difference." Sarah's eyes were bright. "I'm going to work in banking after I graduate, help other institutions do what we're doing here." "Then my work here is almost done," Evelyn said softly. 6 months after that first confrontation, Evelyn stood at the front of Fellowship Hall at New Hope Baptist Church. The room was packed with faces she'd come to know well over the past months. Community members, bank employees, journalists covering the ongoing story of Crownstone's transformation. She was here to announce something she'd been planning for weeks. "I'm stepping down as chair of the Community Advisory Board," she said, and the room erupted in protest. She raised her hand for quiet. "I'm 91 years old now. I've done what I set out to do, established the structure, proven it works, trained my successor. It's time for younger leadership." She gestured to David Rodriguez, who stood looking shocked near the front. "David has agreed to take over as chair. He's brilliant, he's dedicated, and he's got the energy to see this through for the next decade. This is his fight now." The transition took another month, but finally, Evelyn could step back from the constant meetings and appearances and interviews. She could return to being mostly just herself. She kept her weekly sessions with Sarah. She stayed on the Community Advisory Board as an advisor, but not the chair. And she watched with satisfaction as the model they'd created began spreading to other industries, hospitals, schools, government agencies. 1 year after walking into Crownstone National Bank with a faded bank card and a recorder in her purse, Evelyn Carter sat in her small living room on Maple Street and read through the stack of letters that still arrived weekly. Stories from people who'd been inspired to speak up. Thank you notes from scholarship recipients. Updates from community organizations that had been empowered by the work she'd started. Marcus visited that evening, bringing Thai food and news. "Grandma, you're not going to believe this. The NAACP wants to give you their Lifetime Achievement Award. The ceremony's in 6 months." "That's nice," Evelyn said, but her mind was elsewhere. "Nice? Grandma, it's a huge honor. I know, baby, and I'll accept it. But Marcus, I need you to understand something." She set down her tea, looked at her grandson directly. "The award isn't the point. The viral video isn't the point. Even the Community Advisory Board, as important as it is, isn't the point." "Then what is?" "The point is that ordinary people have power, real power. The power to say no. The power to demand dignity. The power to document injustice and force institutions to respond." Evelyn's voice grew passionate. "I'm not special. I'm just someone who decided to stop accepting the unacceptable. Anyone can do that. Everyone should do that." Marcus smiled. "You're going to say that in your acceptance speech, aren't you?" "Probably." 2 years after the confrontation, Evelyn Carter walked back into Crownstone National Bank. Not for a board meeting or a press conference, but simply to check her balance with a teller. She was 92 now, moving slower but still sharp, still observant. The lobby looked the same, marble and glass and money, but felt different. The staff smiled at her, yes, but they smiled at everyone. She watched a young black man in work clothes approach a teller and be greeted with genuine warmth. Saw an elderly Asian woman ask a question and receive patient, respectful assistance. It wasn't perfect. She knew it wasn't perfect. But it was better. Measurably, documentably better. When Evelyn reached the teller window, the young woman looked up and recognition flashed across her face. "Mrs. Carter, it's an honor." "I'm just here to check my balance, honey, same as anyone else." The teller smiled, understanding. "Of course. May I see your card?" Evelyn handed over the card, still faded, still scratched, but somehow she'd never gotten around to requesting a new one. The teller processed it without comment, without judgment, with simple professional courtesy. "Your balance is," the teller started, but Evelyn waved her off. "Actually, I don't need to know. I just wanted to see if I could check it. If someone like me could walk in here and be treated like a person." The teller's eyes grew bright. "You can. You always could have. But now we remember that." Evelyn nodded, satisfied. She turned to leave, then paused. Across the lobby, she saw a young black woman in modest clothes approaching the teller stations, holding her purse with the same nervous grip Evelyn remembered from 2 years ago. She watched the staff greet her warmly, saw the woman's shoulders relax, saw her smile with relief. That was the real victory. Not the awards or the press coverage or the policy changes, but that single young woman walking into a bank and being treated like she mattered. Evelyn Carter left Crownstone National Bank for what would be the last time, her cane steady on the marble floor, her head high. Behind her, the institution continued its transformation, the work far from finished but irreversibly begun. And ahead of her, on Maple Street and beyond, a world slowly learning that dignity wasn't a privilege to be earned but a right to be defended. She'd started something she couldn't finish alone. But that was okay. The best revolutions were never completed by their catalysts. They were carried forward by everyone who came after, who took up the cause, who remembered that change began with someone, somewhere, deciding they deserved better. And they did. Everyone did. That was the truth Evelyn Carter had spent 92 years learning and would spend the rest of her life teaching. That evening, sitting in James's old recliner with a cup of tea growing cold beside her, Evelyn closed her eyes and let herself rest. The fight would continue tomorrow, carried by stronger hands. But tonight, for just a moment, she could breathe and know that she'd done what she set out to do. She'd refused to be invisible, and in refusing, she'd helped others see themselves. That was enough. That was everything.